All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me, for everybody in the audience and then everybody online. This is my first time demoing here in the new Adorama event shooting area, so I'm really lucky to be here, and he did a phenomenal job. He built this entire thing. So first of all, good job. Excellent. So I am a fashion and portrait photographer based in New York, and I'm also a photo educator. How many how many people have any idea, have seen me do something at some point online or something? Okay, cool. So you're friends. Okay, great. So I specialize in fashion and beauty photography. A majority of my clients fall into the realm of like skincare or creative portraiture. In fact, I'm bidding on a pharma job right now. Okay, so pharmaceuticals, right? Sounds really boring, clinical, maybe very clean. No, actually, the reason that I'm getting asked to bid on this huge job is because I am an expert in color gel photography. And so their vision for their advertisement is actually using multiple super color, saturated colors, reds and purples, a glowing orb. And so, yes, you can have a specialty like beauty or portraits, but if you have a specialty in your lighting or in a certain color expertise you have, brands and companies will actually seek you out, because if they're spending a lot of money on something, they want to hire the expert. They want to hire someone that's tried and true, they know can execute their vision. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to demo color gel photography, but specifically we're going to talk about color harmonies. So how colors can play well together, how to choose colors that work well together in gels. I'm going to talk about how to make the colors saturated, and I'm going to do a little bit of lecture, and then we are going to photograph my beautiful model and friend Ashley, so you can see these in real life in practice. So where we're actually going to begin is going to be a little bit of sciencey theory stuff, and then we'll move on to a little bit more of the practical art stuff. Okay, so how we're going to start is talking about the color of light. Specifically, have you ever seen these before? These overlapping colors, so RGB and CMYK. When it comes to pigment, what happens if you mix a bunch of colors together? You keep just adding a bunch of colors. As you do so, it builds to usually kind of like an ugly brown, almost black, right? You don't really have much control over that color. But what happens is when you mix many different colors of light together, it actually builds towards white. So specifically, what these are saying to you is if you mix RGB together, this is called additive color. And when you mix RGB light together, it gives you white. But on the other hand, if you look over, do you see where there's RGB, so red, green, and blue on the CMYK color wheels over there? If you see that, it actually, RGB gives you black. And so additive is adding together to give you white. Subtractive is taking away to give you black. It's taking away light. So the reason this is going to become useful with color gel photography is when you're trying to change the color of a background. If you're used to painting or mixing colors, it doesn't work the same. It works totally different. So I bring up the additive where these overlap. I bring this up and I look at it when I am playing with gels, because my brain is wired towards pigment. And so it actually helps me a little bit. So, here's the illustration of them. But this is what that knowledge can give you. In this photo, and I'm going to show you a compressed version of this, in this photo I am using 3 lights, and all 3 of the lights have a gel on them, RGB. So I have red, green, and blue, but do you see how the background is white? The light on her face is white? It's because they add up to give you white. But then you'll also notice I just said I was using red, green, and blue. I'm not using magenta, and I'm not using cyan. I'm not using yellow. But you can see it in the shadows behind her. And that's because if you look at it, if you're looking at where those colors overlap, where the red and green mix together, that's what's giving you the yellow. So you're seeing yellow in the shot, even though I'm not using a yellow gel, because of how those colors interact. So it's something I recommend, like set up a mannequin or a vase or something that's not moving and just play around with this. Like take 3 light sources, and it doesn't have to be strobes. It could literally be a flashlight. And if you do the exact same thing, Roscoe has those little gel sample kits, if you've ever seen them, where it has every color. You could take those, tape them on the front of a flashlight, and achieve the same exact idea, so you can see it in practice. So one of the things I wanted to maybe illustrate, there we go, demonstrate to you is red and green, when it comes to light, gives you yellow. But if you're mixing pigment, that's not what would happen. So this is why I'm saying you have to kind of wire your head a little bit differently when you're thinking about colors in the realm of lighting. So just search additive lighting, brings it up. Keep that with you when you're playing with gels. Now let's talk about actual gels themselves. So you can see I've got gels on the front of my strobes here. They're a specific type. So gels come in 2 main categories. The first category is the practical category, which is color correction, which you guys may have used. Maybe you go on location and there's like a lot of tungsten light in the space and you want to neutralize it. So then you might grab like a CTO. What that allows you to do is take your light, if you bring an artificial light on location, and warm it up. So now everything in the space is tungsten. And then you can set your camera to tungsten and it will neutralize things. Like that's color correction. I'm not talking about that today, but CTOs, CTBs, there's also ones that are magenta. The ones we are going to be using are what they call in cinematography party gels, because they're not rooted in anything practical. It's just fun. It looks beautiful, super saturated colors. This is one kit that's really nice, the Roscoe Cal color. It has a whole bunch of different colors, so it's a pretty big kit. The other one that I use is the Roscoe Color Effects kit. That's another good one. I don't remember how much this one costs. I think the Color Effects is just under $50. But if you do pick them up, I recommend that you get 2 kits. And the reason I recommend that is sometimes I'm using multiple gels and I want them to match. And so it'd be like, oh, I want the background light to be blue and the foreground, and then they're not the same color and you can tell. So just in case you're into it and want to pick one up, I'd pick up 2 matching kits. All right, so for talking about gels, why would you use a gel? Like, what's the purpose of it? We're not going practical. We're going to talk all about creative. And the first reason is probably for mood, like creating an interesting mood in your images. You can cool things down, make them look mysterious. You can add warm reds and oranges, and it makes it fiery. It makes it sexy. That's one reason, just mood alone. The other reason for me, mostly in the realm of fashion photography, is I'm playing off of a color in the shot. She's wearing a red dress, so I want to complement that with a color on the background. Or the makeup is all purple, so I want to add purples and blues to the shadows, to the background, to the hair light, those sorts of things. So I'm taking what's in my scene and then amplifying it more. And then the other reason would be, especially for portraits, think like celebrity portraits, or maybe it's album covers or performers. It separates it from reality. Like when you all of a sudden have 5 lights and each one's a different color, it looks like they're on stage performing. So it allows you to get something with a little bit more creativity and polish. Those tend to be the 3 reasons that I introduce color gels that are not practical. So these are all examples of what I'm talking about, like really super saturated gels, hardly any white light in the scene. These are the sorts of images that I like to create. And so believe it or not, that picture on the left, the woman with the green gels in her hair and the blue, that's similar to the reference that the pharmaceutical company reached out to me about. And it doesn't look anything like I would envision. My portfolio is not filled with pharmaceutical, but they saw that lighting and go, that's actually what we're looking for. That's the vibe of what we want. Has our brand colors, has the moodiness, those sorts of things. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about how to pick your colors though. All right, I have to do it though. If you want to learn more on gels, I got more. I got a 3-hour class and a lighting guide. So there. Okay, now. All right. So when I think about using gels, I try to encourage people to think of what you're trying to achieve in the shot, rather than just throw a bunch of colors together. Because when you do that, it does look haphazard. It doesn't look as refined. It looks like someone playing with gels, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with playing with gels, but I'm saying in your end shot, if you think of color theory and color harmonies, it looks more refined. You look more professional because you went in with a purpose and you achieved that by your color of gel choice. So this is true with anything in photography. I encourage people to come to a shoot with a concept. Everything has to work together. When I know what I'm trying to achieve, it's like, okay, the lighting, the makeup, the background, the clothing, the posing, like all of it works together. Am I going for something strong and bold? You'll see that in the makeup, in the way that the subject is giving me their body language. You'll see it in the colors. Or is it meant to be subdued, more desaturated colors, softer poses? So as with anything, there's no right or wrong answer, which is tough when you teach. It's like, hey, well, what should you do? Well, it all can work if it works, right? So in the end, whatever you choose, if it's effective in the image, it's effective, and don't let anyone teach you any rules. But the rules make it easier to make decisions. So we're gonna talk about some of those. So specifically, I wanna talk just a little bit about color theory. There is a free website that I use nonstop, color.adobe.com. Go there, like I said, it's free. It's an interactive color wheel. I find this insanely useful because when I am working with color gels, you can pick a single color. Let's say I know the model is wearing a blue dress. And then I'm like, all right, well, what do I want to add for gel? So what colors should I introduce in my scene? What colors should I do in the makeup? If you go to this color wheel, you can actually go through a bunch of different color theories, different color harmonies, and it's telling me what would work with that blue. So for example, here, let's just say that I pick that color blue, and on the left-hand side, do you see where it says color harmony? I'm gonna go to monochromatic. So what a monochromatic color scheme is that everything is the same hue. Hue is what we think of color, like that's the word we use. Specifically, when you break down color, it's more than hue. It's, you actually have your saturation, so how rich is that color, how pure is that color, and then you have your luminance, luminosity, brightness, right? How bright is that color? But we're talking about hue here. So if I go there and I pick monochromatic, it's like, okay, one way you could use blue in your scene would be to do more blue. I could do a blue dress, blue filled to the shadows, a blue background, blue makeup. That would be monochromatic. But then the next one that's on there is probably the one I use more often, which is called an analogous color scheme. Those are colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. Basically, it's monochromatic, but you expand it. It just gives you more flexibility. But we see analogous color schemes in nature. We see it in, like you go into a forest, right? And it's just all different saturations and hues of yellows and greens next to each other. Or, okay, it's getting cold here in New York, so let's be tropical beach, okay? You got the blue sky and the teals and blues of the water and the cyan. It's analogous. Because of that, it tends to be peaceful. Gives you a little bit more range of color, but they're all next to each other. There isn't a lot of contrast there. So this is telling me, all right, I could do kind of green, blue. I could even go maybe a little bit into like purples. Or I could go over here. I still got blue, but it goes blue, purple, pink into magenta. So you can kind of rotate it around and it'll be like, oh, you could do cooler colors with that blue. Or I could start to do a little bit warmer colors with the blue. And then I'll give you one more to start off with here. Next one, of course, the last one here is complementary. So complementary is across from each other on the color wheel, which creates contrast, it creates pop, it creates tension in your image. Like it is supposed to create tension, but it works together and it balances each other nicely. So monochromatic, all the same hue. Analogous, hues next to each other. And then complementary, opposite for contrast. So this is what I use because I look at it and go, okay, so I could use a yellow to create that contrast. So to go back now to our presentation, I'm going to show you a couple examples of this before we demo. Let's just see some of these in action. Okay, so here's some examples. This one is a monochromatic color scheme, and I shot this with one light outdoors. I actually had her bathed in sunlight. She's in hard light, directly in the sun, and then I cooled down my white balance to make everything go really blue, and the background was blue. And then I filled in the shadows with a B10 Plus and a blue gel. So everything in that photo is blue. Now to expand on that, analogous, colors next to each other, I've got my magenta, reds, yellows, oranges, everything is that like warm, fiery color. Another example is this makeup was inspired by a goldfish. And so we decided to go with goldfish colors. But everything is oranges and yellows. And then you can see that different color theories give you very different effects. So complementary on the left, red and green, right? It's Christmas colors. But when you use them kind of more desaturated or more subtle, it's not like it screams Christmas to me. But you'll notice that outline, how much does that outline pop against her? Because it is the complement. Whereas in the analogous, I'm using kind of blues and teals, and so it's all just next to each other. It's a little quieter, not as much contrast. So you can see kind of how I'm making some of my decisions. All right, I want to give you one more complicated one, but it's not that complicated. Remember how I said analogous is next to each other? Complementary is across? You can combine those and have split complementary. So what it means is you can have a few colors next to each other, like blue, teal, cyan, and then you pick the color opposite, which in this case was a kind of yellow-orange. So what it does is it lets you have more than just complementary colors. It expands it a little bit and then allows you to have that contrast pop. Those are the ones that I use. There are more color harmonies than this, but monochromatic, analogous, complementary, or split complementary. Those are the four that you'll see in my work endlessly. So I think we can demo some. All right, so a couple things. I'll just run you through some gear. I'm using Profoto B10 Pluses here. They're the battery-operated strobes. In my studio, I use a mix. I use Profoto D2s most of the time. And then when I go on location, I take B10 Pluses. Or in a case like this, when I don't want to be tripping over any cables or anything to plug into the wall, a super convenient way, especially if I'm, working in a smaller space. Next up from that, I'm going to be shooting with the Canon R5, and I'm going to shoot with the Canon 24 to 105 4.0. How many people saw the new 24 to 105? Me too, I'm hyped. If you don't know, so they came out with a 24 to 105 2.8, and I got to shoot it. It was awesome because I was shooting it, they wanted me to test it in a few different ways, and I shot it at night, at 105, at 2.8, and the bokeh was just beautiful. Like it's soft and beautiful and smooth and velvety and amazing. So it's this, but it's the form factor of the EF 70 to 200. So it is definitely bigger, but usually when I go on location, I'm taking a 24 to 105 4.0 and a 24 to 70 2.8. So now I'll just take one. Okay, sorry. I was in love. I've been waiting for, I swear, like literally decades for them to make something like that. So I'm hyped. Okay, so R5, 24 to 105, and then I'm using my Air remote. Next up, you'll see that I'm going to be shooting tethered. So as I'm shooting tethered, it's what brings the images into the computer so that I can preview them. I'm shooting tethered into a program called Capture One. If you don't have it, no problem. Lightroom will allow you to tether as well, but Capture One was made for tethering. So, if I say it will work better, of course, what does that mean? I'm going to demo and it won't work. So we're not I'm saying nothing here. Okay, so. All right, so where we're going to start is I want to start a little bit with that additive color. Ashley, can I step you out in front of the white background? We're going to use a white background here as a neutral because I want to show you how I'm mixing those colors together. We have the creative colors here. These are not the color corrective. The reason I want to mention this is I'm using an RGB, so red, green, and blue. But if you try this at home and you don't use the party gel blue, like the really saturated one, if you grab a CTB, it won't work because it's not saturated enough. And so the colors won't mix together, okay? So for these, what I'm gonna do is I'm putting them all bare bulb, all at about the same power. And so what they should do is they should mix together to give me white light. If you try this, I wanna give you a couple tips though. First and foremost, to make it look good in camera, you have to pop your contrast. Like it just ends up looking a little flat. It'll give you the pure white when you pop contrast a little more. You do want to overexpose probably a little more than you think you would. That's how you get to that pure white. You need to have all colors mixing together quite brightly. And different gels absorb light at different amounts. So my blue is not absorbing light at the same amount as my green and my red. So I start with them at the same power, then look at the white around, and if it has too much of one color in it, turn that one down. Right? So it's a good way to kind of sort it out. So let's test this out. All right, so they're all on at the moment. Let's give it a quick test. Of course, got to turn my trigger on. Okay, let's see how it's working here. Okay, cool. So you can see that this is what I was talking about, where it's giving you those colors in the background, right? Now, if I wanted to see about the powers, and I was like, wait, they're about the same power, but it's not pure white. By the way, it's pretty close. But if I take my little eyedropper, right, and see how you can mouse around, and you see above where her face is, it tells me the RGB colors, right? Like it's telling me, you can see it, it's in red, it's in green, it's in blue. And so it's telling me right now, my blue is high, my red is high, but my green is low. Which probably makes sense because see how her face looks a little magenta? Probably then the opposite of that would be green. So yeah, I think I probably need to turn my green up. Like that's one way that you can kind of figure this out. If you are someone with a light meter, just go meter them so they're all the same power. That's the easier way to do it, but not everybody has one. So let's turn this up, turn up a third of a stop.
You got a question in the chat.
Yeah.
So instead of neutral light, it's created by these three colors.
Mm-hmm. What's that?
They're asking there's no neutral light.
Yeah, no neutral light. It's all gelled. Try it again. So see how it's getting more white in the center of her face? And again, it wasn't because I was metering. I'm just checking here on my histogram or on the color picker. All right. If you want to play with this at home, where it looks cool, like I'm in a small space, but typically it looks great with movement. Someone jumping, dancing, flipping hair. Maybe I'll do a hair flip. Okay, hold on. Sorry, Ashley. She got her hair done right before this, and I'm going to mess it up. I'm also going to move these off axis, because when you do that, it makes the shadows bigger. So I'll pull yours that way just a little. Okay, and then maybe I'll like raise this one up a little. All right. Okay, and I'm going to switch over to high-speed continuous. All right, can you do like a Okay. Did you like that direction? Okay, ready? Go ahead. Yes. So cool. Someone said it's fast. That's when you pay for more expensive lights. That's what you get. It's true. No, you disagree with me?
I'm just sitting here, lady.
Okay. Okay, I'll do one more because I liked it, and then we'll move on to the next thing. All right, I'm so ready, Ashley. Cool. Okay, but I say that, and then it didn't fire in that one, so shh. Okay, cool. Excellent. I've actually done this before as well with a hair campaign, because look at all the colors you see in her hair, right? Yeah.
So are you in high-speed sync mode now, or at the regular?
No, I'm in regular, just regular shooting mode, and I'm in high-speed continuous shooting mode on my camera. But because I'm still at 1/200th of a second, I don't need to pop over into high-speed sync.
Just repeat the questions when you do it.
Perfect. And the question was, are you shooting in high-speed sync? And the answer was no. Okay, perfect. Emerson, will you grab me the beauty dish? Okay, so we're going to switch over, and I'm going to show you a little bit about adding color gels to your images when it's a little bit more of a, we'll call it practical use. I'm going to start by changing the color of the background. Seth, will you make the background gray? Love you. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to be using a white beauty dish, and the reason I'm using this is because of the grid. With gels, if you are gelling your subject and gelling the background, I'm not gonna lie, it is helpful to have a little space to work with. The reason is you can separate things out so that the colors aren't mixing together, and you can have different zones. So like the background can be lit with one gel, the foreground can be lit with another. But if you don't have a lot of space, your answer is grids. Because what grids do is they increase that fall off of light. So without the grid, all of this light will hit the background. With the grid, it's going to shrink it in. Less of it will hit the background. Also, nerds for inverse square law, also like bring the light really close to the subject, all that kind of different discussions, but it helps. Okay, cool. Actually, I'm going to stand you right in front of that. Perfect.
You got a question, do the gels still show up on high-speed sync?
Yes, the gels still show up in high-speed sync. Does not. I'm going to take this piece of tape off because I feel like it might not stay on. Not to mess up your stuff. Thank you. All right. This one just seems a little wiggly. Huh? Okay, great. Thank you. I don't know why it just feels wiggly. Okay, cool. By the way, will you grab this? So how I'm attaching my gels. With the Profoto B series, so the B1s, the B10s, the B10 Plus, X, all of those, they have LED modeling lights, and they have something called click gels that literally can click onto the front, like they're made for that. The reason they can do this is because it is an LED modeling light, so it's not going to melt the gels, whereas with a lot of other strobes, like my D2s, for example, they're using tungsten modeling lights, and they do get hot. And so the tip I wanted to give you is how I attach normal gels, if I'm not using the click ones in the B series, is I use gaffer's tape. You want to make sure that it is not duct tape, not painter's tape, because what happens, that stuff melts and it leaves a residue on your lights, and then you have sticky lights or it messes them up. And when I attach it to a light that has hot modeling lights, I don't know if you saw before, is there was a little bit of space I left. It's folded like this. It was breathing room, literal breathing room, so that the heat can escape out the sides versus taping it flat, tight up against the front of the strobe. It's just so that it doesn't melt. Everyone's like, how do you not melt your lights? I'm like, well, or melt your gels. I mean, sometimes I do, but I try not to because I don't want to have to keep buying them. So, all right, cool. Hi, Ab. Ab, what are you doing? Okay, so let's give this a test. I'm going to actually start without the grid, just so you can see this. All right, and then I am going to turn the modeling light on. Whenever I shoot, I turn off all the ambient light in my space. I do not shoot with big, bright windows next to my shooting space because I like to have precision lighting, unless the whole point is that I'm like using the ambient light and the window light. Otherwise, like we close down all the shades, turn off all the lights so I can see, which is why modeling lights are important. Can you? Oh, you did. You built magic. Thank you. He is magical. Okay, thank you. All right, so let me give a quick test over this. All right. Next up, this is because Ab's watching. No, it's true. I'm going to be guessing my exposures, but for those of you who work in the studio a lot, a light meter is actually what you would use so that it tells you what your camera should be set at, or vice versa, what you should set your light at. But we're going to just make it work, which means I'll guess a little. It'll be okay. All right, let's see the first one. Oh, my God, don't judge me. See, Ab, I'm selling you light meters. Oh, my God. Nobody judged me. Yeah, that's right. Oh, no, it's because this one was on. Listen, I get some defense. That was on accidentally, so now it's not as bad. Yes, can you turn the background off? See? It was only half my fault. Thank you, Emerson. Okay, let's try that again. Okay. Whew, see, it wasn't that bad. All right, so here's what I want you to notice. Right now, I am not using a grid. And so what you'll notice is that the background there, first of all, it's uneven, right? You can kind of see on the left-hand side, it's getting a little light. It's a little bit lighter. It's actually from this area of the beauty dish. It's a little bit of bare bulb that is hitting the background, which makes it lighter. So a beauty dish does not produce completely even light for the most part, but a grid will help with that. And then the other thing is the light is spilling on the background. But in order to achieve saturated gels, you need to make sure that your white light is not hitting whatever is going to be gelled. So the tip I impart to all of you is that gels show up most in shadow areas. If white light hits the gel, it dilutes it. And then go watch more of my video for more. I'm just kidding. No, but you guys, that's the gist of it, right? So basically, if you want your gel to be saturated, make sure white light doesn't hit it. That's the secret to all of it. So, for example, can you raise up the background light and can you put a blue gel on it for me? So let's pretend in this very small space, it's not that small, but smaller space, okay?
Ease up, right?
I know.
It's like the 10th time you said it.
Because I'm spoiled. Okay,
you are
on a side note, somebody was saying, we were talking about this the other day, about lights. It doesn't really matter what lights you have fundamentally to make a good picture. But it's the same thing as a car. So why does someone buy a nicer car? They buy a nicer car because it's more reliable, it's faster, or because they're at a point in their life where they deserve it. That's how I feel about my lights in my space. I'm getting the most aggressive side eye ever. Okay, so what we're doing is we've turned on that blue gel. Is that as high as the stand goes? Can you just point it?
Yeah, I can
We'll go. Just go up a little. Just Ashley, don't tip over it. Will you just physically point it higher, Emerson? Maybe.
Let's do that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's perfect. Okay, perfect. We're going for stability and safety, so we're going to put it on a smaller C-stand versus the floor stand. So what I'm going to do is right now we have a blue gel on that background light. We're pointing it behind our subject, and the goal is to gel the background. But I envision this having a super saturated blue. Like that's what I'm trying to achieve. So thank you, Emerson and Ashley. And then maybe go down, because it's close, go down the stop. And then push it a little closer to the background.
Okay.
Thank you. Great. Okay, Ashley. Perfect. All right, so let's see. So I'm going to add that blue gel. All right, so what you'll notice is that the blue is not saturated. It is not what I was trying to achieve. I want something super saturated, and it's not at all. So there's two reasons that it might not be saturated. Reason number one, the white light is hitting the background. If the white light weren't, when we took this previous shot, it should be black, right? The background should be black because that would mean that no light was hitting it. And then the other reason is my strobe might not be strong enough power. So those are two things. Like if you're trying to get your saturation, turn up the power of the strobe. If it's still not saturated enough, then you got to work on your main light. So will you turn that up a stop and a half behind her? Let's just see. I'm pretty sure it's not the problem. Okay, great. So I did get some more blue. Like it did improve it a little bit, but it's mostly pretty washed out. So let's add our grid. All right, here we go. Thank you, Emerson. By the way, when I'm shooting, one of the things I usually do when I pick my camera settings is I take off my trigger and I take a shot of the space to make sure it looks like that. Because if the lights are on really bright, what that'll mean is at my camera settings, it's actually recording ambient light, which that can desaturate the color of your gel as well. So if there's a big window here, that could be one of the reasons my gels don't look good. So I'm put this back on now. All right, so Emerson, we turn off the background light?
Yes.
Thank you. Emerson is my intern graduating to assistant next month. She's doing great, right? Okay, so this is the background light off, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now let's take a look at that same scene. So here is without a grid is the top shot, with a grid is the bottom shot. That's why grids are essential when you're using gels. You have to use them because they control all that white light. So now I'm not changing anything. We're just going to turn the background light on for me. And we're going to take the exact same shot. I'm not changing the power of anything, nothing. So same exact thing. And it's getting much more saturated. Now, I'm looking at this, and I want to show you. See how it's not even? Can you see why? Yeah. Because I looked at it and go, well, that's not right. It's because this is white light. So I have to keep it centered. Basically, you don't want any of this white light like getting out the side because that's going to mess it up. We can, because these are the LED lights, I can tape it on tighter and it'll be fine, or use a regular gel. This one was just a remnant that I had. So let me take the same thing. We'll try it again. Okay, same exact thing. We just made sure no light was spilling out of the side. Okay. And it fixed it. So I think a lot of times using gels is problem solving. You're like ticking down the box. Okay, is the white light hitting it? Is it bright enough? Is it spilling out the side? Is my ambient light affecting it? So looking at this, the whole point of this presentation is using gels, but also color theory. So right now, looking at my color wheel, I could decide what's next. So I want to do monochromatic color theory. I want to do monochromatic. So what that means is blue on blue on blue, like just lots of blue. So we're going to add a fill light here with a blue gel. And that'll be my first test. But what is cool about using gels is if you look at her face right now, do you see where the shadows are? Okay? When I see the shadows, I know that's where the gels are going to appear because the white light is washing out the gels everywhere else. But here, the shadows, they're ready to absorb whatever you give it. And in this case, it's going to be blue light. So give it a little test. And will you bring that right here? Yeah. Thank you, Emerson. All right. Let me turn this on. Okay. So this is my brand new light. This is the first time I'm shooting it ever. Okay, let's see. Let's try, it's bare bulb. Let's try there. Okay, we'll see. And let's see the direction of your head. Chin this way a little bit more. I'm trying to match it to where it was. Good. Okay, so if you look at these shots, especially if I zoom in on her face, here was without the gel. So pay attention where the shadows are, and now look at it with the gel. It shows up exactly in the shadows. So this is a good example of a monochromatic color scheme. Let me take another test of you. Now let's say that I wanted even more blue, especially in the front. Okay, turning the power of the light up will make the blue brighter, but it won't give me more of it. To get more of that blue, you got to move this light because I'm going to move this one around. Will you turn that off real quick? So watch this. I turned off my fill. So now, see how we have more shadow? So now, turn this one back on for me. Same exact thing. More blue. And like, yeah, turning it up will make it brighter. Like it'll make it even a little bit more blue. Go up even a little more. Good. Perfect. Can you turn this way a little bit? Great. Ooh, pretty. So pretty. So, monochromatic color scheme, blue background, blue fill. So what was the next one? Monochromatic, then analogous. Exactly. So if we go over to our Adobe color wheel, if I go to analogous, it's telling me I could go direction of purple, like purples and pinks. I could do a cyan, or maybe even like a little bit of a teal. So I think I'm going to do teal. Let's do teal on the background. So the colors will still work together, but we'll have one slight complication. This light is going to hit the background, right? It's a bare bulb. It's just going everywhere. So this is where you have to use, you could totally use a flag. That's a good point. You could use a flag. Basically, a flag is something to block it off the background. But you could also use a grid. Like a grid will help a little bit. So let me take a shot with it first, just to show you. It'll be blue teal-ish, but it might need a little help. So let me just see. Good. Oh, it's not bad. It's pretty good. So you basically see the blue mostly on the edges up top. But if you shot it in the background, instead of looking teal, just looked like blue that's slightly green, I would add a grid onto it, like a zoom reflector with some sort of grid. Yeah. Okay, so that would be an example of an analogous color scheme. Can you turn to your side again? Let me take another test. All right, so monochromatic, number one, Analogous, number 2. Okay, so then the next one, what was the next one on the list? Complementary. So complementary colors opposite each other on the color wheel, which we have here is telling me if I want that super saturated blue, it's probably there. It's kind of like a yellow-orange. So I've got a couple here. I got to see if these are strong enough because this is looking like a CTO to me. And so that might not be rich enough. So maybe I'll mix these two together. Yeah. So I'll layer maybe the yellow and orange together and give it a try. But this one will make a difference on the background because they're not close to each other. So if that blue hits that yellow, it's really going to shift it. So Emerson, do we have the grid? We do here. Okay. So let me show everybody. Depends on the brand you have. Different brands of strobes make different versions of this, although I picked the one that's messed up. Let me get the one that's cuter. This one. This one is brand new. This one is like 8 years old. So this grid, same thing. It's going to control the spread of light. Profotos, they can fit directly onto the lights themselves. That's not normal. Like most other brands, you have a zoom reflector and it pops in the front. So just so you know, yours might look different. So this one I've got here is my 10-degree grid. Let me test it. I'm going to put it on the blue gel to help control that spill on the background. I don't want the orange-yellow mixing. So I'm actually going to turn this off to begin with. Let me see how that yellow's looking before. Okay, so this one's off. Let's just take a little look. Okay. Okay, testing now. Let's see if it's looking good. Oh, nice. Yeah. Fun tip, if you take an orange gel behind a subject very close to the background and you turn it up really bright, it actually gives you from yellow to orange. It gradates, which is really, really beautiful. It gives you the look of a sunset, which is, you see a little hint of it here. So I'm into that, but I'm going for a complement. So let's turn on this blue. Did it die?
Preventative.
Okay, preventative measures, thank you. And I am going to turn my modeling light on for this so I can see how much with my naked eye that it's hitting the background. And I can see it a little bit. So one thing that does help is maybe moving it so that the light is kicking in that direction, a little bit off of the frame. So let's see how we're doing now. Still hitting her, that's good. Okay, so chin this way again, great. Cool, let me turn this up a little. Without this grid, the background would look really green. Okay, let's see. Cool, there we go. So this would be an example of complementary. As a side note, if you want to get funky, let's talk more like album cover, album art. I'd probably turn off my white light altogether. Can you face this direction this time? And then maybe I just do this. Well, I'll turn it up a little bit. Let's go up and stop. Since this isn't fill anymore, this is now the main light. But let's see. Cool. So I can have them playing off one another and make it something really graphic. This comes back to intention. If I were shooting this, as beautiful as she is, I would probably not just have regular makeup hair down. I think I would probably go with something more graphic, like a hat, because now you're playing with shapes against the contrast of the background. Or a funky eye that you can see, now that she's all blue, most of her features kind of disappear a little bit because there's not much definition. Her normal makeup was meant for white light. So maybe like a really graphic black eyeliner that comes up or some cool shape. Or I've shot like an afro that was in a really graphic shape, so something like that, or somebody moving. At least there's a little bit of movement, maybe like fringe on a jacket. Like those sorts of things make sense to me. Here, I feel like the blue washes her out. It's not because the color doesn't work, but because it's only one piece of the equation. It's lighting, styling, hair, makeup, color all together. Okay, so the next one down the line, so monochromatic, analogous, complementary, split complementary. So then I have some choices about what I want to do. For example, I could maybe take my main light and make it teal and then have like teal and blue. What I think I would probably do, let's do the background teal, and then I think I'm going to leave this one on, as I think I'll introduce a rim light. And so I'll allow my rim lights to be the warm part, because I feel like most of the time I've found, I don't know if you guys have tried this, yellow-orange on the face, like it makes the skin tones go kind of weird sometimes because our skin is already yellow and orange. So it just looks like almost as if someone super saturated the skin. It looks abnormal. So I tend to only use yellow-orange gels on the face if it is meant to look like fire. Like there is red, there's yellow, there's orange, there's smoke effects in the room. Otherwise, I usually do cooler colors on the skin more often than not. Yes?
Say your white balance in your camera, because I know colors drive white balance.
Sure. So the question was, what have I set my white balance to? Because of course, with gels, it shifts all over the place. So what I do is I set my white balance to 5600 or Kelvin or a flash white balance preset. But here's a fun trick. Looking at this photo, there is no neutral color, right? There's no white. There's no reference point. So if you come over to your white balance and tint, I can make it whatever I want. So let's say I want to make it more green. Like that looks correct as well if that was the intention, and I took the tint and I made it green. And now the background, even though I was lighting it yellow-orange, isn't at all. So I usually use, if there's no white light in gels, I use it as a starting place and then I mess around with it. Like I just move it around and be like, oh, that actually looks really cool when she's teal, and let me hyper saturate it and add some contrast, and I mess around with it like that, but this is what it was captured as. So, great question. Yes?
Yeah, for a shoot like this, you know, with R5, what kind of autofocus mode are you using? Are you using phase detection, eye detection, or possibly just like a center zone? Like in this particular case, what are you using?
So the question was, for shooting like this in this setup, what am I using for my focus modes? So I am using face tracking with eye detection because I can't see at all. I have terrible eyesight. Thank God for these cameras because it helps me nail focus. And by the way, you'll notice my camera settings. I'm actually shooting at ISO 200, 1/200th of a second, f8. I usually don't shoot wide open or wider open. Like I don't usually shoot at f2.8 unless there's a reason. The reasons, there might be reasons. Number one is if I'm trying to blur out the background like it was wrinkled, or there's something in the background that I want to have a pretty bokeh. I'll shoot wider open then. Or if you have really low powered strobes. These are 500 watt second strobes, but when you take a gel on it, especially if it's a thick gel and you double it up, a lot of times each one of those is eating a stop of light. So when I layer up gels, I could be taking it and so cutting in half and cutting in half again. So I could be making my light act as if it is a quarter as strong as it actually is. So in that case, I might need a wider aperture or higher ISO. The reason I went to this little tangent was because I shoot at f8 as my go-to minimum in case I miss my focus because I can't see. So I usually shoot with face and eye tracking and then f8 because it gives me a little more flexibility in case I focus on the cheek instead of the eye or something like that. Yeah?
I just wanted to ask, so regardless of what color scheme you're planning, you leave it like by default on 5600? Okay.
Yeah, so the question was, regardless of what color scheme I'm planning, do I leave it on default at 5600? I do. And then if, for example, I'm doing a monochromatic color scheme like you saw up here, so this was 56, well, it says when it comes in, but it was, here's 5600. It looks basically the same. But what I will do sometimes is I will cool down the white balance while shooting tethered, just to be like, oh, actually it made her skin look more silvery. I like it that way. But the raw file is flexible, so I can change my mind later. But 56 is where I start. Yes?
If you did want to add a gel to either Beauty Dish or you
Yes.
use a softbox, what would you recommend to do that if you just have these big gel pieces?
Yeah. So the question was, how do I, for example, gel a Beauty Dish or a softbox? So I actually do put them inside the modifier instead of buying the big ones up front, because I don't know if you've bought the big gels, they're expensive. Especially if you're getting the big rolls, like they can be hundreds of dollars actually. So I still use the small ones. What I do is I buy one of these kits, and for the Beauty Dish specifically, we cut out circles to be able to put in and then just tape it. But if you don't have it, I literally just crumple it up and tape it a bunch. Like it looks crazy inside, but it works, so who cares? Like the wrinkliness of your gel does not affect the look of the picture. For a softbox, I open up the softbox, I tape it, and I give it a little breathing room. Yeah. Okay, so got that one in there? Perfect. Okay, great. Can you push it into the corner more? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do white light, teal background, blue fill, so that's analogous, and then the split complementary will be the warm. So I'm going to build it in so I can make sure the colors are working well together. So you turn that one off for me? Yeah. Great. Let me just see how it's all looking. So we'll start here. So far, we should have our main light on, which it's not. Okay. Back up. Our main light and our background light is where I want to start. So let's see how this is looking. Okay. Boop. It was my white balance I messed up, right? Just I hit reset. But also trick, like you could do that for an album cover. It could look cool. Like it doesn't matter if it's intention, right? I could cover it with glitter and pretend I litter with all green light. Okay, but what I actually shot was this. So I've got the teal on the background. Now let me add the blue to the fill. Great. And I'm going to turn the modeling light on, even though the reason you wouldn't turn your modeling light on is just, you know, you're using battery operated lights. It's just so that you're not draining your lights, but these are fine. And I'm not shooting with them super high power. So this is so far now with the fill. Okay. So we've got our analogous, and now let's go for our split complementary. Let's turn that on. And will you turn the modeling light on as well so I can see where it's hitting?
Yeah. It's on 3 right now, the power.
That has the gel on it.
No, did you want to double that?
Well, yes, but I'll take a test and show them no gel because why not? It looks like nothing. And these ones, so most of the not the normal, but the non-portable soft boxes, you can tell her, you can say whatever.
Yeah.
So in these ones, well, not 7 forward, there we go. In these ones, you can open it up and then you just tape it over this. But in some of the portable ones, I think that one does have it. Some, depending on the brand, they don't actually open up back here. So you do have to actually go in through the front, which is kind of a pain. I don't know, someday someone will invent a really good solution. Like the click ones, moving forward, when we move away from tungsten modeling lights is the solution, because then you don't have to worry about it being right up against it. And you do C47s, right? You do safety clips, what do you call them? Clothespins?
Sometimes.
And we turn it up a stop-ish. What power is it at?
Is that 4 now?
Turn it up 5.5.
Oh, right.
Thank you. Let's test it. Okay. Can you go up another stop? Okay, let's see this one. Okay, so see how the warmth, it still works, but because it is the complement is the opposite, it gets most of the attention, right? I think it's drawing quite a bit. One of the rules of color is that cool colors recede, so they draw less attention. Warm colors come forward. So when you see a lot of movies, think of a Marvel movie, when they color grade it. Have you ever noticed how sometimes the skin tone will be really warm, like a yellow, orange, like super saturated, and then you look at the shadows and they're like a blue teal? They're doing it because even in a busy space, the warm skin tone comes forward, but the cool is a little less distracting. So in this case, yeah, like the color does technically work and balance, but I think it gets a lot of attention. So I'm gonna maybe try to use it a little more. Can you face this way, actually? Yeah, and chin, look totally profile. Let's see it where it's more of a rim light. Let's see what I think. Okay, cool. Let's bring it, I think what I'm gonna do maybe is, I don't even necessarily need my white light, right? Like my white light is not playing into my color theory. So I'm gonna turn this one off. And Emerson, can you bring it forward a little bit? We're gonna turn it into, instead of just a rim light, like maybe a little bit of a short light, like a little bit of light underneath her eye. Okay, so we're gonna see there. Okay, so I've got the warmth. And then I don't need the blue on the same side because the blue on this side is actually washing out some of that orange, although it still looks pretty good on the screen. Can you bring it over here?
So the blue on this side of the face is wrapping around.
Yeah, on that side, it's kind of hitting where the yellow is. And the yellow blue, they'll cancel each other a little bit. So that's why I'm moving it this way. Yeah, let's see. So now I think it'll be even more, except for brightness. There you go. Should be even more distinct. So Ashley, can you pull your hair off your shoulder on the back side? Yeah, good. Perfect. And I'll look over towards me again. Cool. Great. So this would be an example of a split complementary. I wanted to throw one more fun thing into the equation. I am using a hard light here, and I'm going to see it's only really hitting her face. I can actually see it. Like I use this with my hand all the time. I can see like the blue hits here, and it's kind of gone by here. I might back it up and point it down a little because it's a hard light and she's wearing a sparkly top. And so I think I want to add a star filter. So I use star filters all the time when I'm going for like extra. Like I'm just trying to do everything. I'm doing gels, I'm doing, he says always, yes. I'm doing gels, sparkly clothing, like let's just add the sparkles. So will you hold this for a sec? I'm gonna make sure that this is also hitting her top. If I can do this. Yeah, and I think I've got it. So I see a little bit of blue on her top. Let's look for that. Let's look for that sparkle. Let's see. Oh, I got sparkles. Ooh, okay. So now look your head that way. Beautiful. Cool. Yeah, and you can, by the way, you can actually see it in camera. This is not something that you kind of hope for. You can actually see it with the modeling light where it hits. But when I pointed it down, it's starting to not hit the top of her head. So I'm just going to like try to get the middle ground of that.
Say hi, Gavin.
Hi, Gavin. Okay, I'm going to try one more of this. Perfect. So hair off your back shoulder again, and you're going to look towards Emerson. Beautiful. Great. Let me get one more sparkle here. Cool. And by the way, every time she moves, it sparkles in a different place. So sometimes having the person move around is helpful. Yes?
Do you have one of your favorite filters on right now, Black Promist, or is it just like...
So the question was, do I have one of my favorite filters, the Black Promist on, or do I just have a star filter? I only have the star filter. This one in particular is a 4-point star filter.
So the reason they have stars is they don't look naturally. Like,
Exactly,
okay.
yeah. So
And
this
then-
is what it looks like.
Yeah, and then another question, if you don't mind.
No problem.
So, I feel like an idiot for asking this, but
No.
it looks like this sequence, the sequins, they're kind of like out of focus, but actually they're not. They just look out of focus because of the light hitting them. Is that right? But they're actually in focus. Is that?
Yeah, so the question was, if you look at the sequence right now, they actually look kind of out of focus.
But they're not. Right?
They're not. The only reason that they look that is the star filter.
Yeah, okay.
Because the star filter, what it does is it's throwing the light in all directions and it makes it hazy looking. But if I look back to when there was no star filter and I like zoom in on them, like they're normal.
Or you look at the dark ones and you can see that they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, you look at the dark ones and those ones are still
Thank you.
pretty, like over here, those
Right.
ones are sharp, but it's the star filter and me being extra. So now knowing that I have 3 different color theories here, let me just bring some up to show you because we're gonna do let me reset this one though. Complementary, our analogous, our monochromatic. I'm gonna bring these all up. And then I'm gonna throw one more thing into the mix on this last one. On this last one, same thing. We're using multiple gels. This is where I would go in and I would mess with that white balance and see what kind of different color combos I could get out of it. Like I could go for a super green, something like that, and pop the color. So,
Lindsay,
yeah. Hi.
can you use, just for people, can you use the starlight filter with soft light?
Okay, so the question was, can you use a star filter with soft light? It has to be something reflective and hard light. So the only reason that you see these reflections is actually from this light. There is a little bit of haze that you're getting from the softbox coming in from the side, but usually that's not going to be hard enough to give you the big reflections. These just happen to be big sequins, so they are getting us a little bit more reflection, but usually has to be hard light, pointed, reflected right back at the subject. back towards camera, rhinestones, glitter, sparkles, which is why my wardrobe stylist, like most of his research is where can I get Lindsay sparkles all the time. So let's go through these. First one, monochromatic, all the same hue. The next one down the line is our analogous, so expanding from the blue over to a teal. Then we have our complementary, opposite each other on the color wheel. Then we have our split complementary, which is our analogous. So we've got our blue and green, or blue and teal, with the yellow-orange opposite it. And then the last one is messing around with the tint and white balance. So when I approach a shoot, the lighting is part of it, but instead it's, okay, what mood am I trying to achieve? So I just chose blue as a starting point, but it could have been any color. But what am I trying to emphasize? Is it meant to be playing off of the theme of Barbie this year, so I go with lots of pinks? Or am I going for something fiery and it's all reds, yellows, and oranges? So when I approach a shoot, I pick the initial color based on the mood I want to achieve. Then I use the color theory to help me figure out what other gels or colors I can integrate into the scene. So I can take a few more questions before we wrap up if you have any. And you too, Seth. Not your questions, but if people have questions.
Lindsay?
Yes.
If I'm trying to get vibrant colors and a lot of natural light,
Yep.
I can't limit down my shades, I still get a lot of natural light coming in.
Yep.
Would using a neutral density filter kind of help, or would that mess up with the color balance?
Okay, so the question was if he has a lot of ambient light in his space and it's maybe messing up the colors, would using a neutral density filter help? What I would probably do instead as my go-to is, first of all, if you just put a black V-flat up, even like a portable one, just right next to your subject, it makes a huge difference to kill a little bit of it. Next from that, first, rather than having to put an ND filter on, which sometimes can make it hard to focus and whatnot, if you instead shoot at higher apertures and lower ISOs, I would try ISO 100 f11, and that should still get rid of most light unless you have like direct window light, but then do the V-flat if not. So I'd say save the ND if you can get around it. What else? I saw another one. Yes?
How would you compensate or approach differently for richer or darker brown skin tone?
Sure. So the question was, how do I compensate or how do I act differently for richer or darker skin tones? So first of all, I actually often like what gels look like better on darker skin tones because it ends up looking a little bit more metallic. The reason why is you'll notice a highlight more on a darker skin tone than a highlight on a lighter skin tone. Because if you think about it, light on light, there's not as much contrast. So I tend to use harder lights on darker skin tones like I did here because it will give me that really pretty metallic look to the skin. I don't think that there's as much, many things that I worry about. Makeup perhaps is if there is a shine on the forehead, because again, you'll notice a highlight on a darker skin tone more readily. I'll use HD powder or something to absorb some of the highlights here, just so that there's not, a big reflection right in the middle of the forehead. That's probably the only difference. You're welcome. Yes?
Question, so for somebody who wants to start into gel photography, how many sources of light is it recommended to have?
Okay, perfect. The question was, if someone's interested in starting in gel photography, how many light sources is it recommended you have? So here's the thing.
The more the better, I know.
The more the better. No, you can do it with 2, but I think 3 is where you get your flexibility because I can gel a background and change the color of a fill, which is why, I ended up, with 4 here, but I think 3 is where you can really start mixing and matching colors. At 2, you're either choosing a background or a fill. So 3 if you can. Yes. Yes. Say it one more time. Yep. Oh, yeah. Good question. Can you grab it real quick? The optical spot somewhere. Okay, so her question was about the optical spot, which is great because I designed it, so you should all buy it. Thanks. He says it's on the shelf right there. So it's the Westcott optical spot. Just grab me any lens. So basically what she was saying is when you use this modifier, it has a lens that goes in the front. But the magic of it, or the fun part of it, is that this creates extremely hard light that you can use these little leaves to create slices of light. You can do slice of light across the eyes, or you can use these, which are called gobos, go between optics. You can put any shapes in here and then project that. So in this instance, if I, instead of using the beauty dish, use an optical spot to create a pattern on the face, everywhere that there was a shadow created by the gobo or by the leaves, it would then take on the blue color, which is great. And if you look at my portfolio, you'll see that over and over and over and over and over and over again, because it's like, it's my thing, which is also the pharma job. Like that's in their vein. So that's my specialty. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, so if you know your output will be used both, say, on the regular displays and in the print media. Okay, so obviously the print media cannot reproduce like the same dynamic range as
Sure.
display. So do you ever take this into consideration, you know, at the time that you shoot, that you know, like you would adjust the lighting, you know, especially for it to look better in the print? Would you take essentially a separate picture for the display media and then the separate for the print? Do you ever do this?
It's a really good question. So the question was basically, you know that how you view something on a display and in print is not the same. And especially when you're representing supersaturated colors. So do I ever shoot in a different way intending it for print? So the answer is no, but I process it in a different way. So whenever it's ending up being in print, I lighten it up and I will do there's a way to check if things are out of gamut based on how it's going to be output. I usually end up desaturating some of the colors just a bit when it goes to print. So lighter and slightly less saturated. But most of my clients, like most of the time people hire me, it's for every medium. And it might be print, but it'll probably also be online. So I make what looks best and then we tweak. Yeah. Yes.
So there was a photo example that you had in the slides earlier. You said you only used one light and it was outdoor. Do you
Yes.
mind going over that? 'Cause I really want to try something.
Sure.
I only have one light, so I can't do the 3 setup.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. The question was, the comment was that he wanted me to go over this one because he only has one light and not the 3 or 4 I'm using over here. Someday. Okay, no. So what I ended up doing is I exposed for the highlights on the subject's face and the suit she was wearing. So I literally stood her in the sun, okay? Then I underexposed slightly so that the background, because the background was hit by the sun and it lost some of its saturation. Have you ever seen that? Like a color hit by the sun doesn't necessarily look too vibrant when it's overexposed. So I underexposed so everything went really rich. And so you can kind of see, like I'm trying to, but she's got a wall. The wall's here. Okay, so the sun was here. And then physically right up against the wall, I had a bare bulb just out of frame with a blue gel at full power because I'm competing with the sun. So that filled in all of the shadows that the sun was not hitting. And then I cooled down the white balance a little bit more to make it even more cool. You're welcome. And by the way, you can do that on location, but basically you take it and are you going to do your fill with the gel or a hair light as a gel? You can do the same thing with one light. Yes. Sorry. I was gonna...
Is that the actual color of the outfit?
Yes. Was that the actual color of the outfit? Yeah, it was a silver suit.
So I didn't, okay.
It's a casual Wednesday look for my models.
So when
Yes.
you're using it to edit, do you use it just capture one, or can you use Lightroom as well?
Sure. The question was, when I edit, do I use just Capture One or can I use Lightroom as well? So fundamentally, those two tools are, as image processors, do mostly the same thing. So they could be used interchangeably. I like a little bit better how Capture One handles color a little bit. I like how it handles tethering a lot more. Lightroom will 1000% still get you there.
Okay.
So you're fine whatever you got.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
I got one more.
No, I appreciate it.
So when it comes to shooting on like a sequence or
Mhm.
glitter,
Yes.
I notice whenever I'm using flashes, it just dulls it out. I saw you use the star filter, and that kind of helps bring it out. But if you don't have that filter, what would you recommend to really get that shine?
Okay, so the question was, sometimes when he shoots sequins or glitter or things, it can look kind of dulled out. So couple of things. First of all, if it's a sequin dress, what I usually do is I light the face and the sequin separately. So I'll use a grid. I'll light, like I shot, there's a fantastic designer, his name's C.D. Green, He'll likely be in one of the Bergdorf windows this year if you go past. He does things with sparkles and glitter and galore. And he hired me to shoot his lookbook and his catalog. And so what I did is I lit things separately. I lit a beauty dish grid on the face so I could have that a little bit more angular. Then I had a separate light below that was a softbox from the side. And then I had a big white V-flat here so that you would still get some shine on the sequence. That creates reflections but not sparkle. What actually creates more of the sparkle is taking light away. So in other words, if you just do one big softbox, you'll get the even shine but not the sparkliness. So what I'll do is I'll do a beauty dish grid on the face and then add 1 or 2 concentrated hard lights like on the dress, or with glitter on the face, I'll use a 5-degree grid on the face, like a tight grid to pick up that sparkle. And then like another softer light as fill. So take away for sparkliness or use big reflections for evenness.
So using more of a hard light just to show it.
Yeah, the hard light is what will give you the starburst effect when you add the star filter. But if it were catalog where you want the dress to look smooth, then you would use big reflections because it's lighting all of them, whereas the hard light's lighting a few of them, if that made sense. Yeah, I think it did. Yeah.
When do you think you're going to update your calendar for workshops for next year?
Oh, I love you for this lead-in. The question is, when am I going to post the calendar of my workshops next year? So first of all, I have a studio in Jersey City. I do 10 or 12 workshops a year. I have one tomorrow and the next day. They're sold out. You can't come, but that's okay. Great. I'll see you tomorrow, the next day. Tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. So I'm going to post it probably for Black Friday. And then I might do one more that I'll post before the end of the year, but that should be a majority of my calendar before, within the next month. Thanks for that plug and lead in. I appreciate you. And as a side note, because tomorrow's class is actually a class that I'm doing with Nanlite. So the reason I wanted to mention this is I'm using strobes here and color gels, but the concepts I'm talking about here also apply with colored LED RGB lights. So Nanlite Pavo tubes or the Nanlite 60C. This entire setup, the way that he originally had me lit in red, and at one point it was blue. The way that the colors mix together, or the way that color theory works, doesn't just have to be gels. It's really more color light is what the concept is. So yeah, if you're a continuous light shooter or if you shoot video, all of these concepts apply.
Oh, that's cool. That's dope.
Yeah. Great. Yes?
Would it be crazy or
Crazy.
counterintuitive if you don't have the gels available, if you want to experiment with the look to see how to get there, mess with the color grading in these programs?
Good question. So the question was basically, let's say you don't have the gels and you want to achieve this look. How much can you achieve in color grading? So color grading is where you play around with color and tone in post-processing, and there's several ways to do it. You can play around with white balance is one of those ways. You can also play around with how colors are distributed to the shadows, midtones, and highlights. A lot of times I will do a little bit of the color in my gels, and then I push it the next like 50% or the next 25%. So an example, I want to see if I shot one in the beginning without the gel. Let me just see. I did. Okay. So for example here, right? So this is without the grid, without a gel. This was just a beauty dish. In Capture One, or it could also be Lightroom, I am going to go over to my color balance. In Lightroom, you would see your color wheels. From here, you can see that it says shadows, midtones, and highlights. And I have this big circle, and I can start to drag the colors around to add them to the shadows, midtones, and highlights. So for example, here to the shadows are primarily on the right-hand side, a little bit under her chin. But if I grab blue, it's not gel, but it's gel-esque. Like it does definitely move me in this direction. So I don't know if I shot one. I shot this with a blue on the background, so it's hard to tell. So you'll notice it's not going to be as saturated. It's not going to be as defined. But as far as achieving your mood, like it definitely is moving me into a cooler vibe. Like this one, here you go. This one was where there was more shadows. So now if I go in and add blue to the shadows, there'll be more of it visible because of that. as a side note as well, it is a little bit, you have more control for color grading in Photoshop with masking, but in Lightroom and Capture One, if you learn those masking tools, you can get a little bit more precise. If, for example, it was affecting her skin tone, you can color grade on a separate layer and then remove it off of the skin. So gels are better, but it's only part of the equation, and I use color grading for almost every shoot that I do. You're welcome. Okay, perfect. So with that, I want to thank Adorama for inviting me out and having me at the space where I can actually meet and see people after always being online. Thank you, Adorama and Seth. And if you guys have some questions, I will stay after while we pick up some gear. And everybody that is online, I encourage you to subscribe because this is actually a new channel, and you guys as well. So this is a new Adorama channel that is specifically for these live streams and for things that happen here in this event space. So if you want to see more of those, subscribe to that particular feed of YouTube channel. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I mean, yes to those online, but thank you for everyone who came out in person. Just as a reminder, Adorama does these events quite often. And so you guys can come join for free and watch and learn. And I think it's better because you can see things differently in person. You can ask questions. So I hope to be doing more of these in the future, and hopefully you'll come see me in real life. And good job for those of you who did. So today, I'm actually going to start with a little bit of, we'll call it a lecture. It's not. I just want to show you some real examples of what I'm talking about, because today we are talking about commercial versus editorial photography. These are terms that get thrown around a lot, and they do have real meaning behind them. But have you heard people say like, oh, that's so editorial? What does that really mean? And I want to talk about it a little bit. What is the difference between the two aesthetically? So what makes up a commercial shot? What makes up an editorial shot? What about the thrust behind them, like the purpose of the different images? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate some commercial versus editorial shots where I'll take very similar lighting setups and make just little tweaks, and it will go from commercial to editorial. And I'll show you how it's a little bit more about the thought process and purpose behind the photo. I'm going to be using specifically solely continuous light today. And one of the reasons that I wanted to do that is since we're talking about commercial photography, so much of my commercial work recently is using continuous light. And there is one major reason why. Do you guys know why? Motion. Like when I'm doing commercial work, if I'm shooting an ad campaign, they're spending a ton of money on the models, the hair and makeup, the production, maybe it's the set, like they're putting a lot of money behind it. And they want to get some sort of video out of those days as well. Even if it's just behind the scenes, or maybe it's little snippets for social media. But more and more, I would actually say a majority of my commercial clients want me to shoot continuous, so they have that flexibility. So that's one of the reasons we're going to be using it today. By the way, my model here is the one that you see on the screen for the presentation. She has actually been in both commercial and editorial shoots that I have done. So I wanted to have Rochelle here because she's done all of that for me. All right, so again, thank you to both Nanlite and Adorama. That's why I'm here today. They're both supportive not only of me, but the industry. So thanks, guys. Okay, so let's start in the beginning. When I talk about commercial versus editorial photography, the whole idea behind it is that intent matters. What are the photos going to be used for? That's the difference. It's not necessarily what the photo looks like, because a commercial photo could look like anything, and an editorial photo could actually kind of look like anything. It's what is the end purpose of them. So I put this up here. I'll just give you the gist of it. When we talk about commercial photography, it means that the purpose behind it is to sell a product of some sort. It could be skincare. In that lead shot that I showed you with Rochelle, we were photographing for a hairline. And we were photographing, it was hair dye and hair dryers and combs and all of that kind of stuff. But the main goal is to highlight the features of something that you're trying to sell. Now, typically you're gonna see it in ads. It could be billboards, it could be social media ads, it could be magazine ads, it doesn't really matter. But when it comes to commercial, the benefit is you make money. Like when you hear commercial, you go, yes, I'm gonna get paid well. But what are you giving up to get paid? he says dignity, which is not always incorrect. But the other part of it is you are not in control of the creative direction. Somebody else is usually dictating what the photos look like. It doesn't mean you can't have input, but very often when I do commercial shoots for a client, somebody else already told me roughly what they want the lighting to look like and what the clothing should look like and what the shots overall. I mean, sometimes they come in and they've literally sketched out what the shot should be, and I'm basically recreating a vision that they had. It could be that specific. So the downside of creative is that you're not flexing of commercial is you don't get to flex your creative muscle. Like you're not there to show off all your creative techniques. You're there to take what they want from an idea to a reality. Now, the other side of it would be editorial. And this is where you get to be creative. The whole purpose is to express a concept, an idea, tell a story with images, be creative, evoke emotion. It's all of that. It's all the feels, all the creativity, all the connection. And usually, if it's an editorial, typically we're talking about either a physical magazine, an online publication, or just for your portfolio. It could be for any of those things. But you're the boss for the most part. Like meaning it's meant to showcase your style and your vision. That being said, if you're shooting for a real magazine, you still want to be you still want to be your style, but you want to keep in mind the look and feel, like the audience of the magazine. So for example, there's this one, I think they're Norwegian magazine, that everything they do is like bright colors and gels and weird headpieces and all this stuff. That's great, but I wouldn't then go put that and try to be in Vogue with that. That's just not their aesthetic, right? So yes, you still do your style, but you fit it to the publication. So you still kind of have a boss. Like there's still somebody that you got to please. But if you shoot editorial for your portfolio only, then you only have to make yourself happy, which is why I do editorial shoots. I call them creative play days. I do them probably about once a month, maybe once every other month. It depends, because then there is no boss. We just make art, and it's wonderful. But guess who's getting paid? No one. No one gets paid on those days. Similarly, when I shoot an editorial for, I'm talking like a legit magazine, like names of magazines you've heard of. They pay me hardly anything. I don't know, $500, $600, $1,000 maximum. And that's not pay that I get to keep. That goes towards like, did I pay for retouching? Did I buy lunch? Did I have to rent a studio? Like, so just so you know, editorial means, yay, creative freedom. Boo, no money. Whereas commercial is, yay, lots of money. They tell me what to do. So that's the big difference between the two of them there. So when I talk about commercial versus editorial, the big question is, who is the client? Is it you? Is it a magazine? Is it an ad agency? Is it a particular brand? Like, who are these photos for in the end? So I always think of it like this. When it's commercial, we have like serious meetings before commercial shoots to discuss every question you can imagine. So I'm asking questions like, okay, who are you advertising for? Like, so is it a specific age group of people, a certain demographic? Like, what do they find to be cool? Because you'd want to show that in the makeup and in the clothing and in the lighting. Like, what would they find pleasing? You'd also be asking questions about, tell me about this brand. Like, is it a happy-go-lucky, upbeat brand? Or is it luxury and serious with the mood of, like, I'm too good for you? It's like, that's what's supposed to come across in the images. So you're asking these sorts of questions, and we usually do these pretty in-depth meetings to figure this out, and then we plan it out in detail. So even though I'm saying that commercial is paid, you work for it. Like, it's not a show up and shoot. Like, you do a lot of calls beforehand to plan it out. And so it's things like brand colors, but also maybe compositions. It'll be like, oh, it's going to run in a billboard. Then I have to shoot images that fit that aspect ratio. Oh, it's going to also be vertical reels and stories. Okay, now I got to do vertical for that. So it's lots of planning and thinking. Whereas editorial is a little different of what I'm thinking about. Because I'm thinking about, like, if it's a magazine, what are this year's trends? Like, what's in for 2024? Can I show that in the magazine? If I'm going to be published in a Harper's Bazaar or an Elle, any of those magazines, for example, my clothing and things featured in it do have to be on trend. Like, that's something I have to consider. Even if fashion's not that important to me and I just want to make pretty pictures, well, then you're not going to be in a magazine. So I have to think about those things. I'm also thinking about my style. How does it match up with the magazine? Those sorts of things. So two very different approaches. But in both, no matter whether it's commercial or editorial, I build something called mood boards. And I'm going to show them to you. I'm going to show you an example of them. But basically, a mood board is going to be like a little roadmap of the visuals in the shoot. So like, what should the hair look like and the makeup look like and the lighting look like? Like it helps me plan it out so that when we show up on the day, everyone's not like scratching their head trying to figure out what I want from them. It lets everyone prepare, come up with their own ideas ahead of time. I do really in-depth ones for commercial because that's part of what they're paying me to do. But everything has to work together. So you'll see an example in a minute. For the commercial mood boards, I'm showing like poses because the poses is the brand like, you know, the happy-go-lucky, then I need to show that in the poses. Or the colors, the color of the background, maybe it needs to represent the brand. And the same sorts of things I'm thinking about for editorial, but I have a little bit more flexibility in this. So here's a couple examples I'm going to show you. So the picture on the left would be a little bit more on the commercial side. It's still like pretty dramatic, and this is the same model that I shot, I don't know, I probably shot these images 20 minutes apart. These were not for a real client. But the picture on the left could be showcasing skincare, maybe it could be hair, it could be jewelry if I put jewelry in the shot, like that's the mood of it. Whereas the picture on the right, because it's emotive, because it's dramatic lighting, is more likely to be editorial. But there's not like a clear line. Like there could be a jewelry company that approaches me and says, hey, we like that picture on the right. We want you to do that for us. But in that case, I would have to very much pay attention to, okay, what type of model do they want? What type of jewelry are we showcasing? Would we do heavy makeup or light makeup? Like that's what I'm going through for each of these shoots. Here's another example. Picture on the left, same model, totally different moods. The left would definitely be more commercial. It could be skincare. Maybe I'm showing off the eyeshadow she has on. The picture on the right isn't selling anything. It's just giving you a mood. It's creative. It's putting you in a certain mind space to feel something, right? More examples here. Picture on the left could be a little bit more commercial. Could be skincare, could be fragrance. Picture on the right is definitely editorial. We are playing with shapes and colors and lines. And I was actually inspired because when she came in, that was the shape of her hair. And so I projected a shape of a light on a background to mimic the shape of her hair. But that's because I was the boss. And so I could do whatever I wanted creatively. Versus if it's commercial, someone else is the boss. More examples. Picture on the left. This was actually a model portfolio I shot. The subject wanted a picture that looked more commercial and then wanted another picture that looked more editorial. Notice, commercial, if we're selling something, maybe you want to feel happy and upbeat about it. Editorial, maybe it's a little moodier, a little bit luxury. So I can keep going. This is applicable whether you're photographing men, whether you're photographing groups of people, women, you name it. Now, I just said that there's no definite lines of like what commercial versus editorial are, its intent. I will say there are some modifier choices that tend to be a little bit more in the commercial realm. Like you're more likely to use bigger, softer lights in commercial. Not always, but things like big softboxes or scrims, things like that, umbrellas with diffusion, those are pretty common for commercial shoots. Whereas the work I do, a lot of times you'll see I have like, you know, the little slices of light on the face and bright color gels. Not usually commercial. It can be, but it's very seldom. Also, typically with commercial, there are fewer shadows. They tend to be filled in a little bit more, and that's because you're often showcasing a product, right? If there's a lot of shadows, you can't see the product. And if there is a product in a shot with a lot of shadows, they comped it in, right? Like, so it's like, say it's a perfume bottle and everything's all moody and dark. They lit that perfume bottle separately and then added it to the shot. In fact, that's why when you see celebrity portraits where they're advertising whatever this perfume is and it's all moody on them, and then there's just an overlay of the perfume, it's because they want the bottle to look good but want to make moody pictures of that celebrity. So now I've mentioned, and I say this nicely, commercial tends to be more boring. That's not always, like it's creative challenges in other ways, but there is creative commercial work. If you want it, you have to have a portfolio that represents it. So my point is this, I get hired to do creative commercial work because if you look at my portfolio, it looks like that. But if your work does look all clean, then that's the work people are going to ask you to do. Most advertising clients, ad agencies, brands, they don't want to take risks because they're spending a lot of money. So they want to hire someone, they look at their portfolio and goes, yeah, this person already does that look. You would be surprised like how many times people will hire me for, or try to hire me for a job and they go, do you have this very specific lighting technique that would not be applicable to anything else, but they want to see it, that I've done it? And it's like, of course I can do it, but they actually want to see it. So just keep that in mind. So here are examples of real commercial clients that I've had where I think these look more editorial. Like I think these look like they would be in a magazine. The picture on the left was actually for a hospital chain out in California that has hired me a few times to do their billboards and their ads. And it's fun because people will send me pictures of the ads I did on the sides of buses. That's always really cool. The picture in the middle was a CBD oil skincare ad. And then the picture on the right was for a diamond company. But what dictated these was not me. It was an ad agency or the brand showing me, we want this. But what was really nice is they said, we want this because we saw that you do it. That's the dream, I think. So my favorite part of the way I've developed my career is I get hired to shoot stuff that I would never tell them this, but I would probably shoot for free for fun. But like, I get paid well, so it's fine. It's good. Okay, so let's take a look at those mood boards that I was talking about. I want to show you specifically what this means. All right, so this is commercial. With commercial, you want to leave nothing up to chance, which means there's not much room for creativity, maybe how you interact with your subjects in the moment, maybe a little bit of composition, but not that much. So for example, we send these out. Sometimes they'll call them creative decks. Other times they call them photographer treatments. It's basically the brand tells me what they want from me, and then I go, here's how I would treat, so my photographer's treatment, here's how I would treat the shoot. So for example, not all those photos are my photos. I'm putting this together to show the vibe of what I want to achieve, like half of those are mine. But like here's the overall feel of it. Then, next slide, here's the sort of lighting, the sort of expressions, some posing, maybe some crops. Then I'm also showing the background colors, the color of the clothing. Then we're talking about like the exact pairings of people. So this was actually a campaign that I did for Allergan Aesthetics. They're the company that owns Botox and Juvederm, so an aesthetic company. And they hired me to shoot 100 people over 7 days in 2 cities. And they spent a ton of money. I wish more on me. But all the talent and all the sets and all the whatnot, I mean, we couldn't leave anything up to chance. And so I had to put this sort of thing together. And then the ad campaign that came out looked like this. And the idea is that aesthetic and beauty crosses all different types of people, all different age groups, all different ethnicity, gender identity, and whatnot. So this was what part of what the campaign looked like, and just a small snippet. The end result was actually 1,500 photos that I delivered to them, finalized and retouched. But you saw in my mood boards the colors of the clothing, the posing, the emotions, like all of it. So they knew what they were going to get. Okay, so that would be commercial. Now, editorial can be more flexible. I have entire classes about editorial mood boards and how I build them, but I'll just show you a very basic one. And this doesn't have to be for a magazine. This could just be you're building for your portfolio. So for example, last year, was it last year or the year before? Valentino had that pink runway show, and everything was this beautiful fuchsia. And so I wanted to create some images that were timely based on this trend. This was not for a magazine, but I put this together, and what you can see is I've got really, really bright fuchsia background, maybe streaks of light across the background, bright pink to the eyes, like we're just leaning into this pink on pink on pink. So I put this together, and the reason it's helpful is then my creative team could bring pink clothing. They might not have pink clothing unless I ask them for it. And the same thing, makeup artist could bring pink makeup. You guys get the idea. It's like I'm telling them what I need so they can prepare. Here's where some of the end photos, and this was actually on an Adorama TV video that I did about using mood boards. So you can check that out if you go back to the channel. If you saw the mood board, it makes sense. This is where we ended up. The reason I wanted to show you this before we get into demo, because that's up next, is just that I'm going to be focusing on a lighting part of it, but the difference between commercial versus editorial is not just lighting. It's like all the things that go behind it. So that I'm deciding what should the pose look like? What should the expression look like? What about the clothing? What about the makeup? So I'm going to have her in the same clothing, same hair and makeup. And so one will look more commercial versus editorial, but no, it's all of the things together that really make that impact. And the big question is, who's the boss in the end? Like, who made the decision? Who's paying the bills? What's the intent of the photo? Is it commercial to sell something, or is it to create a mood for a magazine or for your own portfolio? So that is the big difference between the two. And then let's talk about the gear, some of the gear I'm going to be using today. I'll talk you through what I'm going to be using. First of all, I'm being a gear nerd. I just got this light, and it's so sexy, I swear, it's awesome. Have you played with it? Oh yeah, you did it on the set. It is a 500 watt full color light. So I can change it to any color, and it is so bright. But what's amazing, so this is the Nanlite, it's the FC500. It's a Bowens mount. So you can put on any modifier, which makes it amazing because I don't have to worry about trying to get gels right. Like, I can dial this in exactly how I want. So here I'm going to be using 500C. I also have some 300Cs. The other thing I'll be using is I've got pavo tubes. And I use these all the time for a ton of different reasons. These are the 2-foots. And the other reason I have these is also because they are full RGB. They can do full color. I'm going to be demoing that today because I'm going to go from commercial to editorial. And sometimes the biggest difference between a shot being commercial and editorial is its use of color. Typically with commercial, you're not using creative full color effects. So these are, again, the 15s. And they make ones that are 4-foot. I think they even make ones that are 8-foot. I don't have those. Oh, the ones that are around here are the 8-foot. See, I don't even have 8-foot ones. But I use these as rim lights, usually as rim lights or fill lights, and sometimes creatively as main lights. So those are the main tools you'll see today. And then there's just some different modifiers. But guess what? The modifiers that you'll see, for the most part, are the same ones that you probably use with strobes or speed lights, or you're familiar with. Beauty dishes and soft boxes and things like that. And then I will demo some of this later on. I worked with Nanlite. Oh, we hold this. I worked with Nanlite to create, nice and serious, a kit. This kit has 4 pavo tubes. It has a Nanlite 60C, so it's a 60-watt continuous light that's full color. And then there's also a Fresnel, which allows you to create focused beams of light. So I will demo some of those. All right, let's get started. Okay. You can kill the lights. Okay, you can't kill the lights. But I'll talk first, and then I'll bring that up. All right, so just a couple of gear things before we get started. I'm going to be shooting tethered into Capture One. Absolutely any time that I shoot tethered, like really any time. Because if it's an editorial shoot, I want my creative team to be able to see everything. I want the hair and makeup to be able to see the shots as they're coming into the computer and make changes. But for commercial shoots, you have no choice. You have to shoot tethered because the client is always approving the shots or making changes to them. So I'm going to be shooting into Capture One, and then I'm going to be shooting the Canon R5 Mark II as my camera, and I've got the 24 to 105 2.8 lens. I use this 80% of the time because it's 2.8, it's super sharp, and it gives me a huge range of focal lengths. Here, however, you can tell I'll be mostly at the 105 length. This might be an instance where it would be good to have like a 70 to 200 or something like that, but this will definitely do the trick. Okay, let me just untangle myself. Okay, will you turn on that background light? Thank you. So, for our first shot, let's start with intent. We're going to begin pretending this is maybe a skincare ad, something fresh. And so when I think that, I'm thinking skincare. I want glowy, clean, right? Like that, maybe that's the mood. Of course, this would be based on the brand, but glowy and clean to me means maybe a white background. But what's nice about this is he loves when I say this. In this very nice, compact setup, he gets mad at me that I say his studio is small all the time. He's like, what?
It's never good for any youth.
Listen, okay? It's beautiful. But what's nice about this is rude. If you are trying to light a background white in a small space, it can be kind of hard to not get contamination or like low contrast or rim lights that you don't intend. So one of my favorite things to do is a setup like this. So we've got a 500, so it's the FC 500, but I'm not using it at full color. We just have it at like a daylight color temperature. And then I have a softbox. Basically, it needs to be big enough that it covers the surface area you plan on shooting. So you could shoot a 4x6. I don't know, what do you have here, 120? Yeah, no, this is the 90. Yeah, so it's a 90 softbox, not big. And I want to show you why I have it here to begin with. So I'm going to tether up. And another benefit of continuous light is I'm actually going to turn on my display or exposure simulation. So my point is I can see if it looks good before I take the picture. Whereas with strobe, sometimes, you know, it's a lot of checking the exposure as you're shooting. Okay, good to go on that? Okay, so, all right. So what you can see here is that we only have the background light on, this softbox. Look what it does to her cheekbones and her jawline. Like it's just carving. I mean, of course, it's nice that she has those to show off, but that's why you cast models for this, for beauty photography. So what you can see is it is acting actually as multiple lights. It's kind of acting like a background light, or two probably, right? Because it's giving me a pure white background. And then it's acting like I have two rim lights that are carving her out, which is really beautiful. Caroline, can it squish back a little? And I'm going to move you forward a little. I just wanted to show you, this is one of my favorite things for beauty photography, I do it all the time, is the distance of that light from the subject dictates how much that light wraps around. So you see right here, it wraps around so much that it almost hits her nose. You see it? Like the little highlights here. So now, Caroline backed up how far? She backed up 2 inches. She moved forward, I don't know, another like 3-4 inches. Can you scoot this way with the light just a little? So exact same thing, but I've moved her forward, let's say 6 inches or so. And look at the difference between the two. Is I'm changing the amount of wrap of light just by changing her distance to that softbox in the background. So it gives me a lot of control that I personally find a little bit challenging with strip softboxes. Like I find it hard to get just like that right position. So you can actually see it because it's continuous light and I can adjust appropriately. I'll back you up a little. Just like, we'll try there. I'm going to dial in the perfect distance. Great. Great. So I like this because I think it shows off her cheekbones, jawline, carves her out from the background, but is not distracting. So then, for our commercial skincare shoot, I want to add a light that is going to be flattering to her face. So as I'm making these decisions, probably what's more important than the light itself would be the modifier in this case. So I want a modifier that is maybe soft-ish. Like I probably don't want a hard light, maybe a beauty dish. It could be a soft box, but the reason I chose a beauty dish in this instance is it's soft, but it has a little bit of contrast to it. So it's gonna like pop out her features. And you already noticed she has got great cheekbones and jawline. This will help show them off. So I have a white beauty dish, and then what I can do is I can raise or lower the light to sculpt her face more. You'll notice that the light is pretty centered to her face. And the reason I did that is usually with skincare, if you look at skincare stuff, there aren't many shadows. Like just go look at any skincare ads. And I'm not talking about foundation. Sometimes they do shadows to that. I'm talking about like literally lotions and serums and all that stuff. Minimal shadows, it's pretty soft because it just wants the skin to be glowing. When there's shadows, that's when you see imperfections and texture. So that poreless look is when the light is centered and has a fill. So let's start with this light on. I'm centering it on her face, or mostly on her face. Thank you. And this is the 500 again. I'm using it at 5600, which is where I'm going to actually put my white balance so that these color temperatures match. So it'll be a good white balance in camera. Let me take a quick test. Great. Okay, looks pretty so far. So you can see that it's a relatively flattering quality of light. Now, I think it needs to go brighter a tad. And one way you could do this, if you're like, I don't want to guess, is you can look at your histogram. And the other thing you could do is use a light meter. Right now, my camera settings are, I'm at 1/400th of a second. That's basically so I'm not worried about my camera shake. I could go down to 1/200th, but this lens is heavy. I don't go slower than 1/200th because I wiggle a little bit. Next up, f2.8. I might not stay there. The reason I say this is because if it's meant to be skincare, I actually want to see her skin, and at 2.8 it might blur out a little bit. So I don't know, maybe I'll bump up to like, let's try f5. And then because I can see it, because it's exposure simulation, the variable I change is my ISO. I always set my shutter speed to where I know I can handhold it. Then the next thing I change is my aperture based on the depth of field I want. And then my ISO, I don't know, cameras are good these days. Like I just go however high I feel comfortable, which for me is, I don't know, 1600, 2000 ISO. So I'm not gonna go that high if I don't have to, but let's just test. And by the way, these lights are crazy strong. Like what were we at for power before? We were at 75%. So let's see. Let's just check. Try there. Okay, so it looks pretty good. Caroline, let's make this a little bit more carving. Can you bring it in just a little closer to her? And by the way, as she brings it in, anything as it gets closer, it gets brighter, right? But I don't have to guess that because I see it in my camera. And then, yeah, she goes, yeah, it's brighter. Okay, good. And I ended up at ISO 800, but now it's a little brighter on her, so I can go down a little. So I like this. And the closer this beauty dish gets to her, the softer the light will be. Just a side note for everybody, there's a little bit of reflections on her head. It's hot in here, right? Like people are nodding their head. Typically, and those aren't bad, but typically you'd have a makeup artist on set with like HD powder or something powdering down the forehead. Or if you don't like the highlight, you could add a sock and just smooth the highlights out a little bit. Yes, if I wanted a sock. No, it's okay. I'm gonna make some tweaks. So, last thing that I don't think fits the skincare vibe I'm going for is I don't love the shadows. I don't think I'd see skincare with this giant shadow under her nose. Like I like the cheekbones and I like that it's carving everything out, but it's too heavy. So we're just gonna take a bounce reflector. This is a bounce reflector a la Seth. White on one side, and you said you spray painted silver on the other? Yeah. Great, does the job. Okay, would you actually come to this side, Caroline, and hold it for me? Let's give it a test. So remember, this is commercial. Okay, beautiful. Ooh, so pretty. Yeah, I'll go a tad brighter, but it's good. Okay, awesome. Great. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to match it to a brand, and I'd say that this is skincare. It should be kind of happier. So can I do some fresh ones? And you can include your hair if you want. It's up to you. Good. Give me a little laugh to the light. Perfect. Can I have one hand here? Good. And laugh to the light again. Cute. Okay. So to me, that's giving me commercial. I mean, especially if you, let's say you did this exact same shot, and rather than skincare, she had like a big chunky jewelry on, then see, she's like, oh, rings and jewelry. That to me is selling that for like the holidays. You could make this a holiday campaign. Okay, so commercial. What do we switch for editorial? I'm going to do the exact same setup, but I'm going to introduce funky color. Like that's going to be what I change. So that's one of the reasons I selected these lights is because they are full color. So we're going to change the background. We're going to dial it in to kind of like a cyan blue, maybe an Adorama blue, if you will. Sure, he says. Great. So we're going to dial that in. And what it's going to do is it's going to give me those same rim lights, but this time they'll have color to them. Sorry to cough, everybody. Okay, so let's check that out. Now, there's some magic here. And look straight on to me one more time. Ooh, yes. So there's a little bit of magic that happens in this setup. Notice she now has beautiful cyan blue rim lights, which I love, but the background is pretty white, right? And the reason is like if you look to your naked eye, like you can kind of see, at least everyone in the audience can see that that's kind of a blue, like you can actually see it. But what's happening is in my exposure, I'm overexposing the background. So what happens is when anything, like literally any color goes so overexposed, eventually it turns white. Like anything that goes overexposed, it's moving closer to white. So that gives you white there, but when it reflects off her skin, it's several stops darker. And so it still shows that color. So that's giving me like a little bit editorial. But then the next thing I see is more shadows. And shadows means an opportunity to add color. So she's got shadows underneath her nose and her jawline. In the previous setup, we added a silver bounce reflector to fill in the shadows. Now I'm going to add color. So let's do these pavo tubes. No, it's fine. I can shoot over it. We're going to turn these on. And by the way, there are apps that you can pair up all of these lights so you can change it from your app so that you don't have to go in and dial things into an exact color. For example, he says all of this, like all of everything in the studio here that he can turn on and off, he's controlling from an iPad. So which I think is pretty convenient, especially if you're using a lot of lights. Yeah, let's try blue to begin with. Yeah. By the way, I'm using 2 of these pavo tubes here. You could probably get away with 1, but if I did so, I'd have to turn down the power of all the lights in order to have enough output, and I didn't want to do that because I don't want to pick up on any of the ambient light in the room. So if you guys understand how balancing exposures work, that's my thought process. These lights don't need to be that high. I don't want to contaminate with the other light. Okay, cool. So I'm going to lift it up. Got it. Thank you. And then I might, yeah, that looks good already. Okay, cool. Perfect. Ooh, pretty. So see how there's a little bit of blue underneath her chin, right? Let's see, can you raise it up just a little bit closer to her? And I'm assuming those are fine, but they're both 100%, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Right there's perfect. Beautiful. Great, and then can you turn to your side? Yeah. Pretty. Ooh, love. So how it works is anywhere there are shadows, when you add gels on strobes or RGB lights, those colors will show up where the shadows were. So you saw that a few shots ago when we started here, right? See the shadow under her chin? Now you turn on that pavo tube and that's where the color will show up. All right, now, next, if you are considering that, when I tell you this, that shadows allow you to show more color, well, how about more shadows? Means more color. So Caroline's already stepping up to do it.
Slide her up.
Go off to the side. She actually asked me a question. She said, do you want me to go off to the side or up? You blinded. I see everybody go, ugh. Can you come in this way a little for them? I'm watching them all like suffer. Sorry. It's okay. How about there? Better? Sorry, you guys over there are screwed. I'm sorry.
Now you guys know how I feel.
Yeah, exactly. She asked me the question, do you want me to go up or over? When she heard me saying I want to add more shadows, because both will add more shadows. Moving it higher up creates more shadows under the eyes, cheekbones, and jawline. Moving it over creates more shadows on the face. So, sorry guys, I'll try not to blind you for a second. You're stuck. Okay, let me just turn it down a little bit. Okay, will you turn this way just a little? Yep, right there. So now, see how there's blue on the front of her face? Let me just brighten this up just a little, same thing. Great. Now, I'm going to turn off these real quick just to show them the difference. So watch what happens when I turn off these 2 lights. Same exact thing, look that way. Watch the difference. Wherever those shadows were is exactly where that blue color showed up. So if I bring these back together, just to show you, if I got this one, so let's say this one. This would be a very good example of something being commercial versus editorial. Picture on the left is definitely commercial, whether you're selling skincare or jewelry. Picture on the right is getting a little bit more creative. Now I will say, what would sell this even more, like convince you even more, the styling. Like on the right-hand side, let's say if she had like a pretty glittered eye makeup that was avant-garde, or like a sparkly headpiece, that would make it more editorial. Or the picture on the left, if she's holding a product, that would make it more commercial. So pretty similar lighting setups, just slightly adjusting, making sure I change the color of things, and then instead of a bounce fill, I use pavo tubes to change the color underneath. So I will pause for questions if there are any, and then I'll move on to the next one. Do you guys have any questions? Huh? Oh, can you pan it again? Thanks, Paul. Yes.
So the softbox you have in the background,
Mhm.
you were saying that, obviously we can see it's not as blue as we see it here. If
Right.
you wanted it to be, how would you accomplish that?
Okay, so the question was, the background to our eyes looks blue, but obviously it's overexposed in the shot that you're seeing, the final shot. So the question was, how could we get that background panel to look blue, but then also still have like the blue on the face? So you would turn down the power of the light, but if the subject is really far away from the background and you turn down that light, it won't be enough to light them. So you would turn it down and have them close. Those two things would get you closer. It still won't be as vibrant or like as bright on their face, but you could definitely get it there. The other is a post-processing thing. So if I go into Capture One, or by the way, I'm shooting Capture One because it's more stable for tethering, but you could do this in Lightroom for sure. If I go in here and I pull in the highlights, do you see how it starts to get some of that color? It's because all of that blue is in the highlights. And then I could also specifically go to blues and pop up that saturation, and that would help a little bit as well. Yeah. Yes.
In the chat, they're asking, does the size of the pavo tube matter?
The size of the pavo tube won't make a huge difference in this setup because it's all lined up in front of her, so it being longer won't benefit you. But if you take them and make it longer, there is more output when it's twice the size. But I think what's more important for this one is the fact that I layered up the two. Again, it wouldn't be necessary if I didn't have to try to overpower the ambient light here. So for continuous light, having minimal or no ambient light is usually preferred. Okay, anything else in that one? Great. Let's go on to the next one. All right, so let's do a different commercial setup here. Caroline, we'll take away that one. What we're gonna do is we're gonna do a kind of like a 3-point lighting setup. And I will show you a basic adjustment to make it from commercial to editorial. And then I'll mess around and we'll try something else really creative with it. Thanks, Caroline. You can take can I help you? You can take that off and put it to the side. What's that? The light you can keep, the softbox you can go away with. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I see two, where are the other two pavos? Are they not? You do? Okay, cool. So let's talk about 3-point light. I'm just passing this to her to make it a little easier. So 3-point lighting is probably the most common form of lighting for like commercial portraits, we'll call it, photographing athletes and whatnot. What it means is there's one main light on the face, and then there's some sort of separation, some sort of rim lights to pop the subject out. With strobes, probably the most common setup would be a beauty dish and then 2 stripped soft boxes with grids. I could absolutely do that with my continuous lights. I'm just gonna steal this from you while you do that. Because as I mentioned, these are Bowens mounts. Those, the 300C and the 500C. So I could absolutely use these stripped soft boxes as rim lights. This is why it's really nice, is in the past, if you wanted to try to transition from strobes to continuous light, it was really confusing because they didn't have the tools that we're used to. Now it's like, it's the exact same stuff. So anyway, typically it would be a beauty dish as the main light with a stripped softbox on either side. And the point of that is it carves the subject out from the background. So it separates their hair, the side of their body, and the larger the strip, the more even the illumination down the body would be. You could get away with a smaller strip, but bigger would give you a more even light. Same thing was true with the pavo tubes, is we're going to be using 2-foot pavo tubes. This is perfect for head and shoulder shots, even like 3/4. But if you're trying to illuminate someone with nice rim lights head to toe, it's probably a job for a 4-foot pavo tube instead. Reason being is the light is going to be brightest wherever it's closest, which means, let's say it's here, it's going to be brightest on like the side of the face and the arm. And then by the time it lights the feet, there's just not as much output. Basically from the arm to the feet might be twice as far. Twice as far equals like half as powerful. Okay, so let's try that. So you guys can see the difference. Got 2-foot pavo tubes and 4-foot pavo tubes. As a note, this has a grid on it. They make grids for pavo tubes as well. You attach them in the front. They look kind of like the same idea. It basically looks like one of these if you just cut one of these and attached it to it. The reason that that's beneficial is if you're shooting in small spaces, the light doesn't go everywhere. You could like focus it so it's just a rim light. It also helps you out if you have issues with lens flare. So in a space like this, grids are really helpful. You should see his face. He loves me so much.
Big things in here. I don't know you.
I'm just particular. Okay, I'm teasing you. It's great. Yeah.
Someone's asking, bicolor or full color is better for editorial or commercial?
If I have the choice, I always go with full color because I have more control. But when you go with full color, you pay for it. So you have to decide if you really need it or not. Keep in mind, depending on the power of your continuous light, even if it's bicolor, you can gel it. It's just, if you gel something, it might melt. So depends on if you don't use full color that often, it might not be worth it. Kind of depends. Thanks. Oh, sliding. Good. Okay. Oh, it did fall on. Okay. It's fine though. All good. All right. So let me just point one more thing to y'all about the beauty dish here. I did want to talk a little bit about my choice of beauty dish. I usually choose beauty dishes because when you add grids to them, it is much easier to control a light. And so I can get a beautiful quality light on the face, but I can control it so, for example, it doesn't also hit the background, right? It just gives me a little more control. I can also do it with a softbox, but I find that the fall off is a little faster, a little nicer when I use it on a beauty dish. Okay, so when I turn on for white light, we'll start with the rims first. And it won't make a huge difference, but the reason we have the two dialed up, the two side by side again, is to give me more output. The 4-foot is going to, you can see it lights to her feet, whereas the 2-foot would probably light to kind of head and shoulders. As she's setting the light behind as well, is she's turning this to white light. On the Pavo tubes or on any of these lights, you can choose whether something is just adjusting the white balance, so basically from tungsten to daylight, or you actually can go further than that, or if you want full color.
Just based on what's going on in the chat, just so you guys know, all full color lights aren't equal. If it has a lot of output, doesn't mean it's actually saturated with that color. So something to look for isn't just output, but how much color you're actually getting with the output. Does that make sense? So I think that's like a misconception. You see something like cheap and it's like super powerful and all full color. Is it really that blue when it's at full power? You know, like you got to think about that as well.
I don't understand the science behind it whatsoever, but it's the same thing as I told you guys. Is sometimes when something gets bright enough, it starts moving towards white. Like they're getting more output, but it's diluting the color. There's something behind it, but I have no idea. Okay, and can you just for space, just like give me 1 foot. So you'll notice in this instance now, I won't have the white background, but I'm going to have that similar quality of light with those rim lights wrapping around the face. Looks really nice. Same thing, same kind of ideas we saw in the previous setup. Okay. So what's nice again with continuous lights, it's what you see is what you get. I don't particularly like the highlight on her nose, so I'm going to move her forward just a little bit because in the space I can't move him back that far. Listen, he needs someone to harass him. Can I move it up a little more? I'll go to here. Thanks, Seth. Yup. Thank you. Okay, let's test that again. Perfect. Okay, so I love what it's doing to her cheekbones and jawline. Like, it looks gorgeous. Side note, do you see a little bit of light on her face? That's from this spotlight here. No, I'm not complaining. I'm informing. No. Okay. The reason I'm telling you this is there's just that one light in the shot, and it did show up on the face. So that's one of the reasons you really have to be careful if it is continuous light. All right, I'll take another shot since he said, no, I'll turn it off. Thank you. Okay, so makes a big difference, right? If I would have turned on my beauty dish or whatever light source, you may have seen a little bit of this color shift in the shadows. It mostly would have overpowered it though, because it's so bright. Okay, so let's add the beauty dish in. Thank you. Thanks, Caroline. All right. Muscles, yes. Thank you. As a side note, this is no critique of your grip. Typically, it's not. typically with my main lights, I usually put them on roller stands, and Flashpoint has some good roller stands that I've gotten here. I also have a couple from like Avenger that are really nice. Basically, they're wider and they have wheels, but if they have wheels, it's got to be wider so it's more stable. But then we can roll it around. So if I want to make little tweaks to the light on the face, which I do, then I usually use roller stands. I think pretty much every time I set up in my studio, we put the main light on a roller.
Yeah, but see, we're so small in here and so cramped.
That's right.
That we don't really need to move the
He
light that
knows.
much on wheels and have these wide bases for no reason.
Yes, see?
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
He knows. Okay, perfect. And then chin this way just a little. Great. Ooh, love it. And now look right into this light. I know it's blinding you. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, great. So you're seeing how this looks kind of like a, let's say a traditional, let's say luxury portrait, something like that. You could see it being an athlete, could be jewelry. And then the last element that I would ask for the commercial side of it is, okay, what's the brand? That would help me decide what should the background look like. Should it be black because it's dark, it's like a luxury brand? Should it be bright because it's a little more commercial? Should it be a color because it matches the brand colors? And then also, how about those shadows? They're not super distracting, but like if it's a friendly brand, I either want to add another light or a reflector or something. So that's how I make the decision, not because one lighting setup is better than the other. There is no such thing as one lighting setup being better than the other. Doesn't exist. Intent matters. So let's do one with a reflector and then we'll switch it up and go more creative. Okay. Yeah, you look cute. Well, I think that made it much brighter. Pretty. Yeah. She switched it. It looks great though. Let's go a little darker. Can I have the hand a little lower? Yes, pretty. And then can you turn, let's turn that way. Yeah, that's good. And then look up to the light. Pretty. Okay, so now that's the more commercial, still a little dramatic. Let's go for creative. For creative, I would like to use a different modifier on my main light. So actually, in fact, let's use a different light altogether. Do you mind? Seth, can you help on this one? We're just going to take that off, and I don't want to drop your light. Okay, so yeah. So first, I'll take the question because I think someone had one back there, and if not, it's fine. Okay, somebody said, what is the purpose of using both the 2-foot and 4-foot pabo tubes? I just wanted more light output, and I had 2 2 2-foots and 2 4-foots, and that's it. There was no other purpose, just getting a little more output and a little bit more coverage. Yes?
All right, given the intensity of the light and the subject, like the session, you try to wrap it up faster, or?
That's an excellent question. So the question was, given the intensity of light on the subject, how bright it is, do I try to wrap it up faster, right? Because you can see sometimes she's squinting. The only reason I have it so bright is I just want to make sure it's not mixing with the ambient light here. I would put it lower in a real session, so basically to where they're comfortable. So really good question. Yeah.
It's kind of later.
Fine.
Say for when you deal with brands and clients and editorials, do you show them a portfolio first, or would you prefer using a photography rep for that, or just?
That is also a great question. So the question was, when I am trying to reach out to brands and try to get them to hire me, am I going through a rep or am I showing them my portfolio? I do, well, first of all, I do a million things because anybody pay attention and hire me, right? Like you're trying as many different venues as you can. Most of what I do, or what I do most often, is I send out emails every single month with a different theme. So I'll send out an email one month to skincare and beauty, but it is a curated portfolio. It's not my whole portfolio, it's just like skincare stuff. And then one for hair, and then one for entertainment and whatnot, so they're getting things that are relevant to them. And like agents can certainly open up access to brands and clients you don't have, but that shouldn't be your only way to connect with people. Awesome.
One more question.
Yeah.
About the lights. Do they have the effects like the Amaranth, like the fireworks or the?
Yes. Yeah, the question was, do these lights have the effects like the strobe and lightning and fire flicker and stuff like that? Yeah, they have those effects, which is applicable to cinematography. Which one did you do up here? Okay, sorry, that was not what I wanted. Sorry, baby. this is actually what I want, real quick. I'm gonna switch over to an unusual modifier for this last setup. So the lights that we've been using have been like 500 watt lights. I love them. I think they're appropriately priced, but let's just say they're not cheap. Okay, I get it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use a significantly less expensive light here. We're going to use the Nanlite 60C. So obviously we're going from 500 to 60. That is a huge difference. But you notice already, we don't need that 500 to get a good shot. It's really, really bright. The other benefit is with this 60, so it's 60C, so this is also full color, but it is smaller, which is convenient to be portable and whatnot. But the other benefit besides price, besides full color, is that I can use slightly smaller modifiers. So the modifier I'm going to use here is this thing. It's a mini bazooka versus the giant bazooka. So this is called a projection attachment. I'll pass that one to you, and it has the lid on it still. So the projection attachment is awesome because it's a lens. Like you guys can see it. It's an actual lens here, and it allows you to project a pattern or shape. It comes with these things called gobos, and you can buy gobos to project shapes, or it has these shutters. So I can create just like little slices of light on the subject. Like when you look at my editorial work, it's using a modifier, either this or something like this. So they make a version of this for Bowen's mount. So those 500 and the 300Cs, I can put a projection attachment on it. It's just huge. Like it's massive. I don't know how much it weighs, but it's hefty. So in a situation like that, you got to be careful when you're using it because it's heavy, but you also need some super duper heavy stands. What I've actually been doing, I'll pass this to you What I've been doing recently, and I'm actually going to do this tomorrow, I'm photographing a singer with like 6.5 million followers. So like, wish me luck. Okay, pressure's on. But I'm photographing her tomorrow, and I'm going to be shooting around the streets of New York. I want to use my projection attachment on her, on location. So what's awesome is the 60C kits usually include this sort of thing, which is a literal, like you can put the 60C on top, you can put the projection attachment on it, and then you can put 2 specialty batteries here, and you have that little spotlight portable wherever you go. It's awesome. So I think with the 2 batteries that I've got, it'll last like at least an hour. Yeah, right? Like hour and a half. Yeah, and that's at full power, which you're going to see with this projection attachment, because it's a lens, you do not need to be at full power. So, all right, so let me show you. And by the way, I mentioned the gobos. This is what I'm talking about with gobos. If you look at my work and you see like a pattern on the background or on the subject's face, it's this. I'm using these. Go between optics actually fit in the modifier with these little gobo holders. It's a whole system. I love it. So, okay, let's give it a try. Perfect. All right. See? Okay. But you see your face. You went, oh, right. That's the 60C compared to the 500. It's because the lens amplifies the power.
It's only at 29%.
And it's only at 29% right now. So that's what I'm saying is like even 60 watts is a lot if it has the right modifier on it. So for example, in my kit, there's a Fresnel, which is basically a light that allows you to focus and create a hard spotlight on the subject. That increases the output 500% from a 60C. All right, cool. So can you turn down a little more for her? Great. All right, now let's do, can you look this way? Sorry. You can look past it if you need, or close your eyes till we're ready. And then can you sharpen it just a little bit, which I think is going to be here. Good, let's try there. Perfect. And maybe a little off the bottom. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just shaping the light with both the lens moving in and out to sharpen or soften it, and then we're moving the little shutters so that we can create the spotlight we want.
To use a light meter.
The question was online, do I use a light meter? I only use a light meter if I need to recreate a setup. If I'm, like the job I showed you in the beginning that was in New York and LA, we did diagrams, we did light meters, we did everything you needed because it had to be consistent. So commercial jobs, sometimes editorial, no. I make it look cool. All right. I think that's a great answer, Seth.
Just sitting here.
Good. Okay, close the shutters for me even more. So you can see how much more dramatic I can make the light. Keep going, keep slicing it, okay? And then look that way one more time. Yeah, and just slice the front part of her face, good. Ooh, yes. Cool. Okay, now can you maybe go across just the eyes, just to show the effect? We'll do a little old Hollywood eye light. Great. Thank you. Beautiful. And then can you give me a color with it? So I'll do my last adjustment here to wrap it up. I think I'm going to change some things, change the colors a little. Let's do, what color did you go with there? Can you try? Yeah, actually, I'm lying. Can you do white and we'll change this to blue? I'm going to add some fill to her face in the front. And so every place that was shadow will now have a color. I'll just have you hold it for convenience sake. Okay. And because I just cut the power of this, I am going to bring it a little closer. Because the closer I bring it, the more powerful it will be. Okay. And I'm just thinking, I'm looking at it. And because, again, this is not commercial, I can do whatever I want because it's creative. I'm just trying to figure out if I want to change those rims to a color or not. Okay. Come in real close. Thank you. Let's see. And then look to the light one more time. Caroline, can you hold it vertical? And you can basically get almost in my shot. Can I come right? You come hold right here. I mean, I could probably hold it. I'm just being lazy. Thanks. Cool. Yeah, and by the way, notice when she was holding it over to the other side, it was only lighting the far side of the face, which I do like. But then this here is getting a little bit more light in the front. Okay, here we go. Great, perfect. We'll start. We'll, oh wait, sorry. Right here and look back that way. Right there, cool. Great, perfect. All right, so long story short, for this one, I was getting creative with color because I wanted to, and that's what editorial is about, is I can have a little bit more creative flexibility. If this were a commercial client, which I have had ones that have me do, you saw that one skincare brand, the CBD oil skincare serum. They let me do, it was basically this exact technique. We did teal on the background and teal and blue on the skin because that was the brand colors, right? So there's a lot more input that they'd have, even if they do let you get a little bit more creative. So that is my overview of the differences between commercial and editorial photography. Just remember, commercial, more money, less input over what the final photos look like. Editorial, you get all the freedom in the world, but nobody's really paying you to do it. The perfect scenario is you create enough of these creative editorial images that people hire you to do it commercially, because then you're getting hired to shoot the things you enjoy anyway. So if you guys have any final questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, thanks for joining. Yeah?
So how does the posing change between commercial and editorial?
Sure. The question was, how does the posing change between commercial and editorial? I think, again, it goes back to, like, look at the brand for commercial. You know, what are they trying to showcase? Like if they're luxury, you're going to see a lot of the chin up and the strong shoulders. Whereas if they're more fun and accessible, they're laughing and it's a little less rehearsed. Editorial, I think it is often more dictated by the character you've created for the person. Like, are they wearing like a spiky wig and then all the posing is going to be aggressive, versus is it flowing, then the posing is going to be soft. So I think everything works together, but that's why you start with your intent of the photo. Yes?
So clients-wise, do you get more clients who allow you to express your creativity, or you have more clients who like more telling you what to do and then you like work based on there?
Sure. So the question was, for me personally, do I get more clients that tell me what to do, or more clients that let me express my creativity? The ones with more money tell me what to do. I probably get more that let me express creativity, but they are not the higher paying jobs. And I do a lot of creative portraiture that people hire me for. So I'm, shooting several sessions a month where I'm basically shooting a model portfolio or personal branding, and they let me get more creative. But it's, a fourth of what I'm getting paid for the commercial jobs.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
I do more weddings, and I hear the term editorial wedding style. Would you be able to
What do you think? Editorial wedding style. You've also done a lot of wedding. What do you think about editorial wedding style? I mean, I would think that it's either a little more stylized or a little less posed. Basically getting away from, if you picture what weddings were 20 years ago, not that. I think it's also often when they break some of the more traditional rules, like things aren't, there's motion blur or there's some sort of creative effect like that. Would you agree? She shoots weddings, not me.
I also think sometimes it means something like the opposite of documentary style. So documentary style wedding photography is very much about like capturing what the moment really looks like and sort of avoiding posing or directing too much. And editorial style sort of often means the opposite, where you're trying to create art in the photos. You're doing a more stylized sort of fashion forward approach to it.
And for people who couldn't hear that, basically what she said is one style of wedding photography is documentary, right? So it's fly on the wall, you're capturing the moment. Whereas editorial, you're actually posing and crafting a shot, creating art. That makes sense to me. For my own work, I don't call that editorial, I call it stylized portraiture, but it's the same idea. Yeah. Yes?
I wonder what's hot right now. Is like motion blur the new thing?
The question is, what's hot right now? Is motion blur the new thing? In wedding photography it is, but I don't think it's done all that well for, nope, Seth's agreeing with me.
Because I see it everywhere. Like
yeah.
People, they post it.
Well, I'm sorry. Like the reason that we're saying it's not done well is you have to realize the client usually doesn't know what it could look like if done well. They just want something they've seen out there that made someone else 50 minutes of fame with their friends, you know? And that happens a lot with the wedding styles, I find.
Yeah, I mean, the type that I like is if the motion blur really, truly conveys emotion versus it's blurry because they were doing an effect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions online? Or oh, go ahead.
When you're shooting your fun editorial style, how do you go about finding models? Do you just do casting calls or do you have a strategy?
That is a great question. So if I am shooting editorials, how do I go about finding models? Are you here in New York?
Yes.
If you go to models.com, they list 1 billion agencies. And what I do is I very clearly explain what I'm doing and what I'm looking for. So I will call up each of those agencies, and you only have to do this like once or twice a year, call up and get the right contact, because if it's just a generic email, it goes to somewhere in outer space and no one responds. But then I show them a mood board. Here's what I'm trying to do. Here's how many images I'm going to compensate the model with. This is how much time I need, and this is who I'm working with for a creative team. I give them all that information, and honestly, some agencies, I don't mean this as a bad thing, some agencies when they have new models, it doesn't necessarily matter what you're doing, they just want the models to go practice. So believe it or not, regardless of where you are in the scale, sometimes it's just, let's get that model in front of a camera more. Yeah. You're so welcome. Okay. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully some of you online can join me in person next time. Bye, guys. Thank you. So what I was saying here is if you look at the modifiers that are up on the screen now, how many of these do you know what they are? Can you identify them already? Have you tried them before? Because that's the lineup of what we're going to take a look at today. Now, one thing I want you to take a look at that is in common is 4 out of these 5 modifiers are hard light modifiers. So the light that comes out of them is going to be crisp. It allows you to get more dramatic shadows, more defined cheekbones, all of that kind of stuff, which for me, as a portrait and fashion photographer, that's what I love. And if I want to light my subject so that I have a spotlight on her, a spotlight on the background, texture of light, these are the modifiers that really help me do that. So let's dive into some weird ones to start off with. All right, so both of these are hard light modifiers. And I know that when I look at a modifier, even if I've never tested it before, I can actually analyze it without taking a single shot and have an idea of what the light is going to look like, because there's certain commonalities. So without talking about which one these are so far, let's look at some of the features. So first of all, one of the things I can tell is both of these modifiers will definitely give you defined shadows because they're direct light. So what that means is the light is directly hitting the subject. Yeah, it might bounce around the modifier, but it's not diffused, it's not bounced. Anytime there's direct light, it means it's harder light. But then you probably already noticed the difference here. One is silver and one is white. So anytime that I see something that is silver, I know that the highlights in the photo, highlights on the skin, for example, are going to be more specular. And what specular means is basically you see a little bit more shine, a little bit more texture to them. Whereas when something is white, it's usually going to be a little bit smoother. So if there is the exact same modifier in 2 different finishes, the white one will be smoother, a little bit more forgiving on the skin, whereas the silver is going to be a little bit poppier, give you more contrast, maybe even make colors look a little poppier. So far, even just looking at these 2, okay, you know it's going to be a hard light. This one will be a little smoother. This one will be a little bit more specular. But then the next part of it, of course, that's nice and loud and great for audio. Well, okay, it's a gong, okay?
Hey, they wanted audio.
Looking at these 2, the next thing you can see is shape. I can immediately look at a modifier and just know by the shape what it's going to do with the light a little bit more. And so I'm going to have you hold this one real quick. The easy way to think of this is I always think of light like water. So let's just pretend that this is a bucket of water. I scoop out that water, and when I throw it, I can hit the people in the back because it's going to maintain the shape of this modifier. Also, if I throw it, it's pretty much going to hit this line and then maybe spread out a little bit at the end, but for the most part, it stays pretty concentrated. Whereas, not that this one is super shallow, but you know, I throw this water, it's going to hit you probably. It spreads out a little bit more. So when you look at a modifier, if it is a deep modifier, that means it's going to have a narrower spread of light. Now this one in particular is the first one we're going to demo. This one is called a telezoom reflector. It is also known as a long throw. And so long throw, it's kind of in the name. It can throw light in a concentrated way over a long distance. I liked when we were talking, Seth, earlier, he said he likes how it can chuck light. That's what it does. It keeps the light concentrated, but also even over a long distance. So this might be if you're trying to illuminate somebody and you don't want to have the light in the shot and they're 15, 20 feet away, you can hit them with a modifier like this. The other thing it does is it creates like a really nice pocket or beam of light, which we'll take a look at in a second. Now, this one is the long throw or the telezoom. This one is something called a magnum reflector. And so we've got our long throw magnum reflector, but there are like 5 in between. So there's a long through, there's a telezoom, there's a narrow beam, there's a wide zoom, and basically you can look at them and just be like, all right, how are they spreading out the light? That's the idea behind it. And then what are the finishes? So if you get into hard light, there are so many new tools for you to buy if that's what you like to do and you're nerdy like that. All right, so you can put this on our main light. So whenever you go, by the way, the tools that we're going to be using today, I'm using all Profoto, but many of these modifiers do exist for other brands. If you go to their spec sheet, they'll actually tell you the amount that the light is spreading. So you can see here, this one says that a long throw is between 30 and 56 degree spread. Now, just so you know, there's a couple things that might affect this. This is getting a little nerdier, but whether it is a flat front light or the ones with the dome in the front, that does make a difference. But with Profoto specifically, on the modifiers, you can actually zoom these. This is why it's not called a long throw with Profoto, it's called a telezoom. And what that's based on is it's based on how far onto the light you actually place it. So there's little markings, if you've ever noticed, on the side of it that'll say like 4, 5, 6, 7. That, where you place it, will actually adjust the spread of light. And so that's why it is variable without having, you know, a lens or something to vary. All right, so because we're in the studio, I wanted to show you my studio use of this. Again, I think a lot of times people do use it on location because of the distance, but that's that type of like, kind of like halo or beam of light it creates. This was an editorial I probably shot 10 years ago, and I was just going for like aggressive, hard light, almost like a spotlight, but not like a Hollywood spotlight. I wanted to be a little stronger. And so those are both done with a long throw. So we're gonna test it out here, and he loves when I say this. It really shines over a long distance, but we don't have a long distance here. He hates when I say that. Listen, it's fine, don't worry. Okay, so it's a cozy studio.
Find this much space in New York for free anywhere else. Defy you.
Okay, fine. Although this is not related to this. One of my first really successful editorials I ever did was in my makeup artist's kitchen and we did paint with light because I had no gear and no space. It was beautiful. So DIY works too. All right, Daphne, I'm gonna have you sit right here in the middle. Thank you, and I'll probably, I'm gonna start with you here and then I'll move you back in a minute. Thank you. Now, we're gonna take a couple test shots here. And what I'll probably have you do as well is I'm gonna, if you can lower it if you need, zoom in and out so that they can see the difference. All right, so thank you. Thank you. He's a grip master. Okay, will you raise it up just a little bit? And actually, will you face this way for me? Is that okay? Perfect. So, all right, just a couple of things. I'm gonna be shooting everything tethered. I wasn't hooked up, so let's get that sorted. I'm shooting into Capture One. Capture One is a program intended for tethering. This is what I use for any of my shoots. And I do so, so I can check my exposure and the quality of light, but some of the things I'm going to be showing you here, without zooming in close, you might not actually see some of the changes in the specularity of the skin, for example. So we're gonna compare some of those side by side. But the other reason that I shoot tethered is this is just a lighting demo, but typically when I'm doing a fashion shoot, I want everybody to see how their part of the equation is contributing, so like hair, makeup, wardrobe, so that I can focus on light and pose, and then other people can worry about how the hair is looking and the makeup looking and that sort of thing. All right, so let's see. I got them turned on right now. Let's test. Please work. I'd love you to work. Great. Perfect. I'll get a quick test on this. You all know. You all know. If you shoot tethered, you know the pain. I have no idea. It said it was tethered, so let me just hook it into the other one. Can I move this so I can get to my port? Thank you. Thanks, Lex. Great. Thank you. Thank you, my lovely problem-solving team. All right, we're gonna point this all at you. And here's my usual order. My usual order for things: battery, card, turn it on. I don't know, that's my order. Do you have an order for when tethering? Okay, this is good. Although it's saying auto right now. There you go. Oh, see, okay, great. Let's try that again. There's no reason it should say auto. Okay, hold on, almost there, restarting. Nobody look at my screen. I have no idea what's there. Just kidding, it's just my presentation. Okay, restarting. Don't send.
Yeah, while she's doing that, you guys can hit like. She feeds herself on likes. So.
Is that me?
Yeah. See her? Look at that. It's already going up.
Thanks, guys.
No starving Lindsays. Look at that.
I do, actually.
And don't forget to subscribe. We're doing demos once or twice a week. So if you're new to this channel, this is not the main Adorama channel. Hit subscribe.
While I problem solve this, that's fine. While I figure this out, a couple other things for what I am using is I'm going to be shooting on the Canon R5 Mark II and the 24-105 2.8. It is big. It is slightly on the heavier side, but it is fantastic. It's one lens that I use 95% of the time for pretty much everything that I do because it gives me from 24-105 at 2.8. I don't really need other lenses.
Just try that.
I understand. Thank you. Okay. You're getting featured here. Just kidding. Oh, of course I turned it off as it worked. Okay. Let's see. Yay. Okay. We're just going to do that.
We'll talk.
Got it. Okay, quick test. Amen. Okay, perfect. Now, I do want to check what my, no, I don't want to share. I'm just kidding. I did want to check my color temperature just to make sure I'm close. Okay, so one of the things you'll notice instantly is I did say this is a hard light modifier. And so if you look, when I zoom in, there's definitely specularity on the forehead. This is what I'm talking about with the shine. Now, a lot of people are afraid of hard light modifiers because of this sort of thing. It does show texture, it does show shine. Two things. One is if you're doing a lot of portraits and people are paying you to shoot, I'll use HD powder, which is called high definition powder, which is originally for TV. That is a neutral powder. It does not matter the skin tone. You apply it to the skin and it mattifies it. Now, the other thing that I use will be blotting papers. Blotting papers absorb oil, like if someone is actually greasy, but I always say, like, I don't go like, hey, you're looking real greasy. I'll be like, oh, can you do this? My lights are making you a little shiny. It's just what they do. I kind of take that approach with it. But the other part of it is if you look, it does emphasize texture, and that is just a side effect of the light. If you don't like that and don't want to retouch, then this light's not for you. Okay, so telezoom first demo. Can I have you stand against the background? I'm gonna grab this out of the way. All right, so can you point that right at her centered? All right, beautiful. Great. On or off? You want those off? Yes, oh my gosh, that'd be so helpful. Okay, thank you.
Just keep that model light on, okay?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, super helpful, thank you. That's actually a really good point, is whenever I'm shooting, I turn off all ambient light so I can actually see what the light is doing to the face. All right, so what you see is that it is giving us this pocket of light, which is what you saw in that editorial, but how I made it more concentrated would be twofold. Can you go right up against the background? And then Lex, can you bring this way, way into her? Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Great. So as with water, if I'm far away and I throw water, it spreads out. If I get close to somebody, I can just illuminate there. So this is exactly what I was doing in that editorial, but she's gonna have shadows in her eyes. So I'm just gonna have you lift your chin up. And I know that my light got closer, so I'm gonna turn the power down. Beautiful. Great. So you can get that sort of dramatic effect to it. Now, can you back it up real quick, Lex? Now, if I talk here, do I need to tell you to turn lights on? I think I do. You're okay? Sorry, I'll make you work. Next up, for every single modifier I own, if they make a grid, I get a grid. This is what I recommend to all of you. Grids look like different things depending on the modifier. So for example, this strip softbox has a grid on the front of it. And this grid, what it does is it helps control the spill of light. So if you've ever shot in a smaller space, or you have a light pointed directly back at camera, you may have run into lens flare before, right? Like, so you have those rim lights lighting the side of your subject, but then you get haze on the side of the frame. Adding grids controls that. It shrinks the spread of light down. So it is super useful. It's practically useful, but it's also creatively useful. So with hard modifiers, grids usually look something like this. And it does depend. Most of the time, there's only one size. Sometimes they'll have different sizes. And just the thing to know is if there are different sizes, the smaller the number, the more concentrated the light. So like, this is a 10 degree. If I put on a 20 degree, the light will spread out more. If I put on a 5 degree, the light would be tighter. So what it's going to do is it restricts the spread of light, which allows me to have a more dramatic result than even what you see here. So Lex, if you can put that on, and we'll talk about this real quick. Now, as you saw, I had a white one and a black one. The black is the standard, like pretty much all grids are black. This is a new tool or a new variation. Some brands have this. This is new to Profoto though, the white ones. And what it does is it gives you a little bit smoother gradation on the edge. So like I said, it concentrates the light, but then it lets that concentration fade out instead of being so abrupt. The white one will be that. And it also is a little less contrasty on the face. So let's test it. Did you fit it in there, Lex? So we the telezoom has been with me, as I mentioned, more than 10 years, which means it's made 3 studio moves and endless photo shoots. So sometimes it gets a little bent and I have to put it back together. So thanks. Perfect. I'm going to bring it in even more.
Say hi to Ab.
Ab, hi Ab. Okay, cool. Oh, actually, I have no idea about this power. We're going to probably go up a little. Let's see on my screen. Pretty good. So if I just compare, they weren't in the exact same position, but just to show you like how much more it restricts the beam of light. Can you bring it in a little bit more? We'll just try to make it a little bit more similar to the original position. Yeah, good. And then Daphne, take a smidge of a step to your right. Good, right there. Perfect. Okay, cool. Great. So let's now compare those two side by side with and without the grid. If I switch it over to a white, it'll be a little bit smoother of a fall off. Okay, good to go. So that first one, telezoom. I'm going to make prettier images as we move on, like I'll actually sculpt an image, but I wanted to introduce you here in the beginning just to the modifiers. So telezoom, you can change the zoom on it literally to change the spread of light, and it chucks the light over a long distance. So now let's take a look at our next unusual modifier, which is that magnum reflector. Now, something else that's cool about the magnum reflector is whatever light you have, when you add a magnum reflector, it doubles the power of the light. Like the way that it concentrates the light, it will take a 500 watt strobe. If you put that on, now it's acting like a 1000 watt second strobe because of the way it controls that spill. Now, these have a less of a concentration. So remember the other one, it went to like, what was it, 56? This one can go to 50, but it's with the Pro head. So this is definitely a little bit more of a spread of light. This is what I wanted to show you. So a magnum reflector can look like a lot of things. All of these had a magnum reflector as the main light. Now, with no modification, as is, silver, you're going to get something that looks like the middle one, where it is more specular, but on commercial shoots, because I mentioned I do a lot of commercial portrait and fashion photography. On commercial shoots, this is the one that I pick if I want it to look sunny. It's meant to look poppy. Typically, it's not the only light. Think like a Macy's campaign. It'll be a hard light main with a soft light fill. So what it does is it pops the subjects out from the background, adds that like sharp jawline, crisp edges, and then some sort of, maybe it's a big softbox or it's a bounced light to fill in the shadows to smooth it out a little bit. So my recommendation is if you think hard light looks a little too harsh, use the hard light as the main, but use something soft as a fill. And that will make it a little bit more palatable, a little bit more pleasing to the eye. So the middle one was just direct. The ones on the left and right were using something called a sock, or a piece of diffusion. And basically a sock is like the same material that's in the front of a softbox, but it looks like a shower cap that can pop over the modifier. And what it does is you still get some of the punchiness of the light, but it really cuts down on the specularity, and you can see that in those shots, right? She doesn't have any of the shine to her face. That's the exact same model, just maybe each shot was about 30 minutes apart, and the light looks totally different. So for this one of the things I like to use it for quite a bit is if I add the diffusion, I can make it look like old Hollywood lighting. It's not spot on, but it's pretty good, because if you actually look in the past, we're going to take a look at a modifier later that really is an old Hollywood light. We're going to look at a Fresnel. But another modifier they would use for old Hollywood was something called a scoop light, which is basically a big silver dish, and then they'd soften it with diffusion. It's the same idea. So we're just taking modern day tools, but helping us simulate the look in the past. So let's give this a test. Do you have a, should I take your reflector, or do you have another one I can borrow?
You want a board?
Anything's fine. Great. Okay. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, come a little closer. All right, great. So first thing, because I didn't demo it before, let's talk about being short. Hold on. That's part of the side effect here. I'm going to grab this one for a sec. I want to zoom it so you can see, but I'm too short to reach it. Okay. So here is with it zoomed at its widest distance. It is hitting her from head to toe. Also quite a bit above her head, actually. So I can kind of do in and out. So let's see. Let me take one test here, and then I'll have you zoom it out. Let's make sure it's still tethered. Again, we'll make pretty photos soon, I promise. Okay. So we're gonna go full length. Okay, now can you zoom it the other direction? Great. So you'll notice, oh, barely. Well, it's because there's a double shadow. When we zoom it back out, the edge actually gets a little bit more crisp. Because this is a flat front, it's actually shaping the light a little bit different. So what I can see here from my modeling light is I see a double shadow. But remember, the modeling light's not the same as the flash tube. So modeling light versus what's actually firing. So let me make this pretty, because I don't want to just give you all ugly photos. Let's put you in this chair. I'm going to do a beauty shot with this. Thank you. And I'm going to do the reflector underneath after I take a test of her. And will you, let's see, do you like this side of your face better?
It doesn't matter.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I noticed when she sat, she was sitting this way, but maybe it was because she was facing the audience. Will you turn this direction? Yep, that's perfect. Okay, let me give it a test here. And again, I'm not sure about my power. We're going to test it. Okay, obviously too much. Toning it down a bit. And by the way, for this, I can always set with these Profoto strobes, I can always set it to TTL, which gets me pretty close, and then tweak it. Or I could use a light meter to get accurate, but I'm a big fan of making it look good. So whatever makes it look good, meaning I'll dial it up and down till I dial in the light. So here I might check my histogram, but that's looking pretty good to me. Okay, so in seeing this shot, you can see that it is definitely hard light. Like there's definitely specularity, but look what it does to her cheekbones and jawline. Like you're not getting that level of cheekbone with a soft modifier, like a 3x4 foot softbox, for example. So we've got a ton of definition there. Let's try the reflector underneath. Grab that right there. Let's just lighten this up a little bit. Perfect. And that's the silver side, right? Yep, just checking.
Yeah, it's the silver side.
Perfect. Beautiful. Great. Kind of opens it up a little bit. And then was that the C?
Yeah.
Great. I'm going to turn on. These are not specialty modifiers. This is a totally normal one. This is actually, I don't know how to turn it on from here with this modifier, or this trigger. We're going to use a 3x4 foot softbox just to light her jawline a little bit. And I'm going to have you look your eyes a little higher, but don't hurt yourself. All right, now let me turn that. Is that actually on? Mm-hmm. Okay, there we go. I was trying to get the modeling light on. Perfect. Let's take a look. Pretty. Okay, beautiful. And then eyes back at me. Okay, cool. So hard light modifier, super crisp definition. Let's switch over and see what it would look like if we take the Magnum reflector, but do the white one this time. So it'll be a little less specular. So we're going to switch that over. And can you zoom it to the same position? So she was zoomed to the 2 position. Yep. Here you go. Go for it. No. And by the way, if I did see that and I really didn't want the highlights, I would probably switch over to putting on a sock, or if I've got the white one. One other thing of why this works for old Hollywood is if you are shooting a Caucasian skin tone, or to someone who's very pale, and you switch it to black and white, and you pop your contrast, do you see how you don't really see the highlights on her forehead as much? Here's why, is you've got a highlight against a highlight. When you make the image black and white, and then you raise up the contrast, it takes this highlight and brings them closer together. So basically it's a highlight on something that's similar tone, so you don't notice it as much. If you had a darker skin tone here, I would pretty much always add the sock, or make sure you have a good makeup artist that's making sure there's not too much shine. Okay, so let's look at it. Let me undo that. Let's see what it looks like with the white. Now, I'll probably need to pump up my exposure a little bit because the silver increases the output of stop. The white is less than that. And look back at me. Not yet. I'm just going to compare this. Yeah, it is. Okay, this is being super nerdy. Let's do the reflector. There is a difference. There definitely is a difference. I see it. And I'll turn your chin this way a little. Good. Okay. So let's grab that one to maybe this one. Yeah, I mean, the one on the left is the silver, and it's just a bigger reflection, and it's a little more specular. The one on the right is the white. So it's just kind of a smaller area. It's a little bit smoother. Medium difference. We were talking about this before. One of the other things you'll see is if you look at the edge of the light, if it was on a background, it will be a little bit smoother of a transition there. All right, so let me do one pretty shot of you so that you actually have some pretty shots, and then we'll go on to the next modifier. Let's do, I'm gonna go really, really tall. Look up this direction. Beautiful. And I'm I'm actually gonna maybe feather the light down. Ooh, yeah, I'm gonna feather this light down because I've got that strong edge. I am going to use it in the background to give me a gradient if I'm tall enough. There we go. Good, perfect. So I like pointed it down so I see that halo behind her. Let's test. Yeah, pretty. Yeah, super pretty. Great. What? Tell me.
Philippe in the chat is asking, what do you think about the smaller Magnum, the OCF Magnum made for the B10 strobes? So
yeah, they have really small Magnum reflectors that they make for the portable strobes. I don't use them. I don't think they're super useful. Like, they're not giving me a big enough quality of light to make it look soft. The fact that they're smaller, it gets even a harder quality of light. So I only ever use them if that's what I have on and I'm trying to control the spill of light a little bit instead of just having it bare bulb. Hardly use it at all. Okay, so I think that looks pretty. All right, let's switch to our next modifier, if you don't mind. Okay, I'm gonna go back. Great. And I'm really excited about this one. So those two, we're trying to warm up here. We started with some like hard light modifiers. There's a whole bunch of them. Lots of different brands have them, but they're not the main ones that I grab, but I love this one. So this is one of my modifier babies. I love this one. And we grab it all the time. So this is a Fresnel. And whenever you picture old Hollywood lighting, or do you see those portraits people do where they're posing with old Hollywood lights? It's always going to be something like this. Those ones in the photos, typically, if you want them with props, they're Mole Richardsons, if you're ever looking for those sorts of things. So this is the Profoto Fresnel. So a couple things about Fresnels. First of all, because they were used so much in old Hollywood, basically like spotlights, they instantly give you that old Hollywood feel, especially when you turn something to black and white. But here's a couple features of it. You'll notice in the front, there is a lens. This is the same sort of lens that you would see in a lighthouse. And the reason that this lens is so great is that it does concentrate the light. And even though it is hard light, it is smoother. It has something to do with the way that you can kind of see the shape of the lens, the way that it bends the light, even though it is hard and the edges are defined, it's not as specular or harsh on the skin. It's really, really beautiful. The other thing I love about this is on the side, it's got this little lever. And what the lever allows you to do is the same thing as the old Hollywood lights. You can either flood the light, which means you spread it out over a wide area, or you spot the light, which zooms it in, and you could just have a tiny spotlight on the face. So you get a lot of control, and it's hard light, regardless of if it's spot or zoom, or flood. So let's look at some examples, and you can put that on and turn on both backlights for me. Now, I'm using Profoto strobes. I'm using all battery operated here. We're using Profoto B10s and B10X Pluses. It's kind of a mix and match of them. But they also make these modifiers for continuous lights. And so I put up an example of one of them that they have for Nanlite, for the continuous lights. But you see what they have in common. They have that lens in the front. Some of the Fresnels, rather than having the lever that allows you to spot or flood, you actually have to rotate them. So that Nanlite one that I have up there, to get it to spot, you're like kind of rotating it like a steering wheel of a car. But it's significantly less expensive, so it kind of depends on what you want to do. Both of these photos were taken with Fresnel. The one on the left is a continuous light Fresnel. So that was the one on a Nanlite. And the photo on the right was taken with the modifier you see here, which is the Profoto one. Both of these are kind of zoomed in to mid-zoom, like they're not completely flood or completely spot. And so you see that beautiful fall off of light on the chest. The light underneath, like the shadow under nose and neckline, is super crisp, but you can still see it's kind of glowy on the skin. So I love this modifier. Here's another example. I was doing a shoot. This was inspired by Hedy Lamarr. Hedy Lamarr had a shoot where she was kind of reclining on a half moon, and I wanted to do my own version of that. And so that was all practical. In fact, we bought the stars on Amazon, and then we hung them from little fishing wire throughout the space. And I did not want one big, broad, soft light to light the whole space, and I wanted it to feel old Hollywood because it was actually a movie promo that she had done, which was in like the mid-late 30s. So we took the Fresnel, and that's why you'll see it's brightest basically from her neckline to the top of her head. We had the Fresnel maybe 10, 15 feet away, and then we had it in the spot position, and that's what gives her that nice tight area of light on her face. Now, obviously, we're not working with that beautiful set, but it's actually really similar here. I used a Fresnel on the face, and then I used 2 strip softboxes as rim lights. The only other difference is I had one more light that was filling in the shadows. Now, the reason I want to make this point is this is obviously a lighting demo where I'm just kind of taking you through some modifiers, but now, as beautiful as she is, it's important what you put in front of your set. So what makes my work is not just lighting, it's the hair, the makeup, the concept, the set, like the things that I put in front of the camera. It makes a huge difference. So let's see another example. This one is actually also lit with a Fresnel as the main light. I had her laying on Mylar, so I just had a Mylar sheet. I did a Fresnel as the main light because it is a hard light modifier. And I wanted that dress to sparkle. I wanted to see all that glitz. So we had a sequin dress, a Fresnel as the main light, and there I was using a 4-point star filter. So you can actually kind of see in this, you can kind of see in this that the white light is lighting basically from her face to her midsection, but it concentrates it so it doesn't fall down the body or on the background. All right, let's switch back.
You know, Hedy Lamarr actually invented Wi-Fi.
Yes, did you guys know that? Hedy Lamarr actually invented the technology that went into Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, I think, too, right? It's related. Yeah. And gorgeous woman, stunning.
It's also the 30s.
Yeah, amazing. She's incredible. Actually, okay, so let's do a quick test. And I'm going to preemptively turn it to black and white because I'm trying to go for that old Hollywood look. So we're going to do that already. Okay, so I have no, can you bring it down a little bit in height? And then try to point it back at her again. Now, let's see. And you guys can see why the modeling light would be really important. Yep, see, this is short people problems. Okay, it's true though. You got it or no? I got it. Okay, let's try there. Perfect. All right, now, there we go. So I'll do flood first. So this is where I have the light most spread out, but because we're relatively close to her, it will be pretty tight on her. So let's take a quick test. I have, once again, no idea about the exposure, but we will figure it out. Not too bad. I'm gonna go up a little bit on it. Okay, again. Pretty. Okay, decent. I'm gonna have you lower it just a little bit more. And then I'm probably gonna I'm gonna have you flatten it to her as much as possible. You look straight on to me. So I'm gonna go for a little bit more Paramount lighting to try to lean into the old Hollywood look. With Paramount portraits and Paramount pictures, often the shadow of the nose would be directly underneath the nose. So we're gonna kind of do that look. We'll try here. I'll just raise her just a little. Okay, perfect. Let me test that again. Then chin up just a bit, and look your eyes right here. Good, pretty. Cool. So you'd see that sort of thing where they'd have the light really high, which carves out the cheekbones and jawline, but then the eyes up, and I'm picturing like some of the actual starlit pictures right now. That's beautiful. Big sigh. Beautiful. And now eyes back at me. And now I will have you turn a little bit. You can turn your whole body to your left. Great. And now look back over at me. Beautiful. Pretty. And now one more. Look your eyes right. Chin that way again, but look your eyes right here. Beautiful. Just putting the catch lights back in her eyes. Okay, so right now, even though she's wearing a black top, she's basically getting lit. You can see a little detail on her shirt to here. It's probably mid-chest. So now what I'm gonna do is we are going to spot it. Like, holy crap. It can go so spotted. I'm not even, like this is the full length. I could light just her eye if I wanted. Well, we'll see about that. Can you lean to feel it on your eye? Good. I believe I'll have to turn that up, but we'll test. Wow, so cool. Like that's how focused you can get the single modifier to be. And lean a little bit this way. Keep going right there. Actually 1 centimeter this way towards me, right there. Perfect. And then chin down a little. And then will you lower it? I'm gonna have you look back at me. Great, and then chin, keep going down. Good, keep lowering it right there. Good, and then your eyes here. Pretty. Cool. Yeah, it's beautiful. So obviously there's limited use for that much spot, but it still looks beautiful. Where's that? There we go. Okay, let me do one more. Will you raise it up to be a little more even with her face? Good, and chin down again.
That spot's also good if you're like trying to light just a necklace.
Totally. Good. Okay, great, beautiful. All right, let's go back and keep going through modifiers. So one more time, that one is a Fresnel, and this is the one that Profoto makes, but again, most brands have some version of this, and it instantly looks classic and beautiful and gives you a lot of control. So speaking of beautiful transition, speaking of putting highlights on jewelry or having control. So this modifier is my favorite for two reasons. Number one, I helped design this one with Westcott, and so obviously it has to be my favorite. But the actual reason is because years ago, there was a modifier like this that I was using, and it got discontinued. And I realized how important it was to my style. So what that tool is it goes by a couple different names. Now, the optical spot is the one I'm showing you here. This one's made by Westcott. But as much as I want to claim it, there are many other ones that are made. They go by different names, though. You might hear projection attachment or optical snoot or anything in that range. The most important part is the fact that there's a lens on the front. Like that's what you're looking for. And they make ones that are huge, that look like gigantic bazookas. Like they're massive. They're really, really beautiful. But that would be basically like stage lights. Like if you were having a spotlight, that's the idea behind it. So how it works is when you get the hardest light is when you concentrate it or amplify it with a lens. So with that Fresnel, it's a lens in the front. That's why you're getting such hard light and you can really concentrate it. Same thing here. So you'd have a base, you pick whatever your, if it's Profoto or Bowens or whatever. And then you can actually pick different lenses. This is true with mine, and again, it's true with other brands as well. And what you're choosing is how much spread of light you're getting with those lenses. So for example, this one is the 150 lens. This is what I recommend for close-ups. This would be for the jewelry example. If you have somebody where they have a necklace on and you just want to add a little bit of sparkle to that necklace, you use this. Or I actually got hired to, I should probably bring it up. I shot a jewelry campaign it was a diamond company. And so she was shot with like a little light on her profile and then had a single stud earring. They wanted that earring lit and they wanted it in camera. You're not really doing it any other way. Like you do need something that concentrates the light so much. So this is the 50 millimeter or the 150 millimeter lens. And then this particular one also has a 50 millimeter. This is if you wanted to light a background or somebody full length. So the 50 head to toe, the 150 for close-ups. Now a couple more features of these sorts of modifiers. Very often they'll have these little shutters, so these little leaves that can open and close. And because it's such hard light, that's how you add a slice of light on your subject. Or if you liked that last shot that I showed you with the spotlight on the eye, you could do old Hollywood eye light where you have that slice of light on the eye. And you would do it here by closing down the shutters. And then can I have a gobo? And then last but not least, the other thing that these specialty modifiers do is they allow you to project patterns. So here I have something called a gobo. It's called a go-between optic. You actually put it into the modifier and you can project this on the face, on the background, like you name it. So I'm going to pass this to you. Let's look at some examples. All right, so here's a really good example of the type of control that you can get from this. Now, a Fresnel, you saw in the previous example, could give you a circle on the eye. But if you wanted it to be a crisp circle where it literally is a sharp edge, you're not going to get that from a Fresnel. The reason you can get it from an optical spot is because you can focus the lens or defocus it, and it can become razor sharp. So in this one, I have the 150 on the eye and then a 50 or a wider lens on the background to give that effect. Here's just other examples. The picture on the left is with the 50, and it's not using any sort of gobos. I just closed down those leaves to look like she's standing in light coming in from a doorway. The picture on the right is using a gobo, and it's a very similar setup to what we have here. I had an optical spot in the front, but the gobo I was using was Venetian blinds. So it would give me the old Hollywood look with the slices of light on the face. And then I had 2 rim lights, exactly what you see here. The difference is I added a red gel so that they would have some color added to them. A couple more just showing you the types of things you can do with it. You could light the background, you could put a spotlight on the face. I will use it in fashion photography to put a slice down the middle of the model. Or the picture on the left, it doesn't really look like an optical spot. I was doing this portrait in a bar, and I wanted control because I didn't want the white light illuminating his face also hitting the bar behind him and the background. And so I popped up the optical spot, I closed down the shutter so it's just lighting his face, and it gives me a ton of control. So, oh yeah, and then I also did want to show you this. You can also give the feeling of it being natural light or sunset light. And so that is, in both of those shots, 100% artificial light. There is 0 sunlight in those. What I was doing, if you can grab one of the, it's in the kit. What I was doing is I was using a window gobo. And so if you use a window gobo, maybe add a little bit of a warm gel to it. And then, you know, something, that's not the right, oh, it's not in that kit. It's okay. Yep, it's fine. You can add it. You could add a CTO or just warm up your white balance and it gives you something like that. So like the picture on the left is only 2 lights. It's the optical spot with the window on her. And then I bounce the light into the corner of the room to get a little fill. The picture on the right, the exact same setup. The only difference is I put 1 more light on her face because she was moving around a lot and she kept stepping out of the light. So it was 1 optical spot in the background, 1 light bounced into the corner for fill, and then 1 spotlight on her face. I used a grid, just a gridded light to illuminate her and pop her out. Now, since we're going for fun and unusual and creative, and again, I believe the people watching this are probably on their like 5th or 6th modifier, like, you know, you've got some gear. If you want more fun stuff, they actually make things called glass gobos. So we have the metal ones that I was holding up before, and those are pretty inexpensive. You're looking at maybe like $15 to $20 a piece for those. And by the way, they make thousands of them. Everything you can imagine, they've got a gobo for. Plus, you can have them custom made. But if you feel like having an excuse to do cool things and spend more money, they make glass gobos. These are usually in the like $80 to $300 range. They're much more expensive. But there will be colors printed on glass or patterns. So in the previous example, when I had the window gobo on the background, let's say you decided you preferred they look like they were in a church and you wanted to have stained glass. That's what the glass gobos would be for. And it'd have the beautiful colors and intricate patterns. But again, the window gobo might be $14. The glass, stained glass one might be $300. So it depends on your effect. So in this one, I'm going to show you the first 2. I've got a rainbow one that I used and then the prismatic. It's really cool because it's a piece of glass and it just looks like somebody went to town for like DIY and just glued other pieces of glass on it. Like it just looks like that. So some examples. This was the Pride gobo. This was only a 2 light shot. I put a softbox behind the subject pointed back towards camera. So that's what gave me the pure white background. And then I took the optical spot with the 150mm lens and the Pride gobo, and that was it. That was all there was to that shot. Now, the prismatic one has been really fun. I've used it a few ways. In this one, I used it on the background light, that back spotlight that's pointed towards her. I put it in there, I concentrated it, and then we sprayed atmosphere in a can, or haze in a can, to give us that beam of light. But now I've got a beam of light that has a ton of color to it, which is not something I have really seen very much before. Or, oh, he's got it. Here you go. This was the atmosphere or haze in a can. And then here's another example. Instead of have it pointed back towards camera for a beam of light, I wanted to have a cool color on the background. So I took the same exact gobo, pointed at the background. Now I have this cool, you know, kind of pastel-y multicolor background. So there are many different ways that you can use the glass gobos, but just know it's more expensive. Okay, so let's play around. We're going to play around with the optical spot on her for a little bit. Okay, can you lean forward? So I mentioned a big benefit of this is not only the concentration, but the fact that you can sharpen it. So I am going to sharpen it a bit. Let's see. Great. And can you, I'm going to put you on this so that you can point it better for me. Okay. Great. So I'm going to have you point at her face. You can sit up a little straighter. Great. Thanks, Lex. Cool. And now I'm going to close down those shutters. And you might need to rotate it slightly. I think I'm going to do the eye light on her. And so I'm going to close the bottom and close the top. Great. And maybe I'll make it really tight light. So I'll start there. Okay. Let's test. And chin back towards me a little. Good. A little less, Lex. Okay. All right, I'm going to go up a little bit. Perfect. So the reason I wanted to show you this is if you want this effect, this is a tool you have to have. Something in the optical spot / projection attachment, because you'll never be able to get those hard edges. However, probably realistically with old Hollywood, it would be diffused. So I could soften the edge a bit. And I'm going to just can you look straight onto me? And then Lex, you probably have to move that here. Good. Perfect. And I'm going to close it a tiny bit more. Pretty. We'll try that. Cool. Will you center it just so it's a little bit more even? Great. Pretty. Good. And then lean forward towards me just a bit. Right there. A little less. Right there. Cool. And now look your eyes into the light. Okay. So that is just by opening and closing the shutters, sharpening it or making it softer. Let's do the gobo though, because that's the other specialty thing. Great. So I've picked this like floral pattern that I thought could be fun and different on her face. And I'm going to sharpen it there. It looks cool. And turn your body that way just a little. Right there, cool. And then Lex, can you make sure that her eye has light on it? So just if she moves, yeah, perfect. So it's looking cool. And I'll go up just a little more. Beautiful. All right, great. So for this is the starting point, because you guys saw what I did in my work is I have multiple of these, so then I could like project a different pattern on the background, and then I could add gels to all of these. Like that main light, I could throw a blue gel over it. I want contrast, I could take the back two rim lights and add a yellow-orange to it and make a complement. So it just gives you tons of different rooms for creativity. All right, I think I'll pop over to the presentation so I'm on time. All right, so this last one I do not have here with me because it's really big and takes up a lot of space. This last tool I would say is most commonly used in fashion photography, but also probably think anything in the 90s and early 2000s, if it was like an ad for a TV show, they probably use this modifier, because what it allows you to do is get even illumination head to toe. And with one modifier, you can control how soft or hard it is. So this category of modifier is called parabolic umbrellas. And so if you take a look at it, since I don't have it here, you can actually see a picture of it. In the center, there's a rod. You put the light on the rod and it is pointed back into the modifier. But then the rod, you can vary the distance in and out. That distance is what determines the quality of light. Now, what is also nice about these is that they produce this light that's like smooth but poppy. It's like if you could make like a beauty dish bigger, but
it's like a hard soft.
Yeah,
it's so hard to explain.
It's hard to explain exactly because it's crisp, but it's not bad texture. I'll show you what it looks like. So here's the behind the scenes of it. And so this is why I said it's large, and they come in different sizes. The Profoto ones, it's got like basically equivalent of a 4-foot and a 6-foot. The 4-foot is the small one. And then there's other companies, I haven't used them before, but there are other companies that make parabolic umbrellas. Yeah. But so again, the idea is that the light can move in and out. So these are not processed. Oh no, those ones are processed. I thought I had it behind the scenes that shows it. These are the examples of what it looks like in fashion photography. It's got that like glowiness to the skin, but you can see the light on the face looks relatively soft, But if it were soft, you wouldn't see that definition of the shadows on the floor or the background if it were really soft. Here's an example of it unprocessed. The picture on the left is when I had the rod far away from the back of the modifier. So if this is the front of the modifier, the rod was, the head was here. The reason it gives you a softer light is because it's filling more of the modifier, which means it is a larger light source. So one of the rules of lighting is the larger the light source is relative to the size of the subject, the softer the light. So with that zoom reflector, when I have it pulled really far out, it's filling the whole modifier, it makes it soft. But then conversely, the picture on the right, I took that light and I moved it all the way in so it was maybe this far from the back of the modifier. It's only lighting like like a small little circle in the back, which means it's a smaller area of light, which means it is going to be more crisp. You can see it by looking at the quality of light on the face as well as the shadows. I almost always use it maybe like 3/4 of the way in to almost all the way in. I like it when it's a little punchier because it's still smooth. But notice, same thing, it is lighting her head to toe completely evenly. This is another reason why people like it so much for those like movie posters, those sorts of things. It's one light, it's poppy, it's even, as well as with fashion photography.
Yeah, well, it's also because it's so large, it's soft, but it's so evenly directional perfectly that you'll get detail out of the fashion, but it'll look smooth on skin. So you're getting everything you want, seeing the detail, the stitching, the beadwork, all that stuff out of a harder light, but it's large, so it's soft enough for the subject.
Now, to build on it, you saw in the beginning when I talked about the different shapes of modifiers, right? If something is deeper, the light stays more focused. Cool. The parabolic umbrella that you saw how deep that is. It's really deep, which is why in both of these two shots, how I put the shadow on the background is I feathered the light. So instead of having it so that it's just faced to illuminate the background totally, I brought it a little closer to the subject and then feathered it off the background, and that's why you're seeing those shadows. So that is another benefit of using a deeper modifier. On a similar note, that's why you might pick a deeper umbrella rather than a shallow umbrella. That depth allows you to feather the light more evenly and then control it from hitting the background. So those are all examples of that. All right, so let's put this all together. These are our 5 unusual modifiers for the day. Now, you'll know what they are. So the top one is a telezoom or a long throw, which allows you to, in the words of Seth, chuck light over a long distance in a way that keeps the intensity as well as the evenness. Then you have a Fresnel in the middle, which is that old Hollywood light that you can spot or flood. Beautiful quality of light. Then you have on the top right the optical spot, which allows you to create slices of light on the subject or background or project patterns. The bottom left is our parabolic umbrella, which will allow you to have a soft quality of light that's still poppy, or it's maybe a hard quality of light that's smooth, like it's both, allowing you to light head to toe. And then last but not least, we have that magnum reflector, which is giving us that sunny look. But if we add a sock to it, it gives us a little bit of an old Hollywood style. So these are all things I'd say, if you feel like you've got your usual kit down, but you want to try and experiment a little bit more, go for those next. All right, do you guys have any questions? Yes?
On the optical spot,
Mm-hmm.
do you lose a lot of light? Like you have to pump the light up to...
Yes.
Like,
Have you tried it before and you know this?
I haven't
Okay.
tried it, but before it came out,
Yep.
I sat home and I bought all kinds of stuff, and I made my own homemade one
Mm-hmm.
where I could change the lenses. And it was frustrating me because I was losing a lot of light.
Yes. So the question was, do you lose a lot of light with the optical spot? And the answer is yes. Now, just quick caveat to this. So for this one, the reason we designed it like that is because it's really portable. You can travel with it. It's lightweight. If you want to boom it out, no problem. However, if you shoot Bowens mounts lights, Nanlite has one that is the bazooka one, and that one puts out a ton of light because the lens is this big. So that's your trade-off. It's like you can go with small and portable, but I usually shoot that closer. If let's say the distance is from you to me and I'm lighting the subject, I'm probably shooting at ISO 800 f4 to get the sort of illumination I want out of that on a 500 watt second strobe. Whereas with that Bowens one, it's massive, but it literally weighs like 15 pounds. It's crazy heavy. Any other questions? There? Okay.
Explained so much.
Oh my gosh, amazing. So I planned this one, we planned it, a little late. Next one I'm doing is December 10th. I will be back if we're actually planned ahead this time. Everybody enjoy your holiday. Thanks, everybody. And thanks, Seth.